Let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, Friend and Guide, Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Dear Sri Yukteswar Ji, be with us now. Inspire us with your cosmic wisdom. Guide our understanding. Open our minds to absorb the truth that you have shared in this book. We offer our gratitude to you and our love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, just to pick up a little bit from where we left off last week. Again, we ended the class with questions and answers, and Mary brought out the very important point that studying this book is a way of feeling close to Sri Yukteswar Ji, which is especially important this month and this week because this Sunday is his birthday. And so always at the time of the birthdays and Mahasamadhis of the Masters, their blessings are more easily felt if we can be open to them. And so it's also nice for Dharmini and me because we're not always here to celebrate Sri Yukteswar Ji's birthday with you all. We were last year and 1 year before that, but generally we're not, but we are now. And at the rate we're going, who knows, we may be celebrating all the rest of his birthdays here from now on. But in terms of, because we travel to the U.S. normally for a few weeks during this time. Also, someone else pointed out that because Babaji requested Sri Yukteswar Ji to write this book, as we study the book, it helps us to be closer to Babaji in a meaningful way. This is the book. And we know the story of how Babaji requested Sri Yukteswar Ji. Later, after Sri Yukteswar Ji finished it, he met Babaji under the banyan tree at the end of Raigat Lane in Serampore, which many of us have been to, sometimes some of you multiple times when we've gone on pilgrimage to Calcutta. That, in fact, is the next pilgrimage that we're planning whenever we can take it, perhaps in February of next year. To go to that very banyan tree. And so again, we can feel close to Babaji because he appeared under this banyan tree to Sri Yukteswar. But why did he appear? To congratulate Sri Yukteswar Ji on finishing this book. And so why not read the book? This is really in some ways the Sri Yukteswar Babaji book. And so it's a way that we can feel closer to Babaji as well. And so that's always nice. Especially if you have a devotional temperament, then this can feed it. Sometimes people are a little nervous around Sri Yukteswar. But remember, Sri Yukteswar was very kind and gentle with people who were not his disciples. And so he would give the children candy and so on. And even Sananda and others always said, Hare Krishna said they were always afraid whenever Sri Yukteswar came. And they always looked to see kind of, as they put it, what kind of mood he was in. But if they saw him smile and reach for candy, then they all ran and they were all happy. And I remember someone said that when they were meditating in the Puri, Mahasamadhi or Samadhi Mandir, where Sri Yukteswar's body is, and they approached him a little nervously, and they suddenly sort of felt him saying, whether it was real or not, I don't know, but you're not my disciple. Meaning you don't have to worry. You're somebody else's responsibility. In the same way that the grandparents will indulge the grandchildren, and where it's the parents' job to train and discipline the children, and the grandparents will be so kind and give all kinds of things to the grandchildren, and often the parents are going, yeah, I wish you had treated me that way. But so it goes on. Because the grandparents are relaxed, because they're off the hook. They get to come, have all the hugs and smiles, and then go home. And someone else has to do all the hard work. So anyway, take that thought if you like. We are going to delve into a deep subject today, which is the subject of the Yugas. And this is just mentioned briefly in Sri Yukteswar's introduction as, now a brief mathematical explanation of the calculation of the Yugas follows. Wow. It's going to be a bit of a ride. And yet, there will be certain things I will cue you to say, if you remember only one thing, remember this. And if you remember only two things, remember that also. But on the other hand, I think it can be kind of fun. So just hold on to your hat. Hopefully you're having dinner after this and didn't have it before, because we need our wits about us. On the other hand, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of a mental workout sometimes. Just remember your past lives as a mathematician, as an astronomer, as an astrologer. We all have been everything in the past. And for some of us, it may have been long past, or it may have been recent past, and now we've had enough of it, and that's partly why we push it away. But just about any domain that there is, any field of knowledge, you've probably done before and maybe even been an expert at. And so it's not too hard to at least imagine yourself and maybe even remember some of that. Much of the trouble with absorbing a new subject or absorbing, for example, a detailed and technical subject, a new language, for example, is that part of our mind is trying to reach out to absorb it, and the other part is pushing it away, saying, no, it's foreign, I don't understand it. I didn't understand this sentence, and I'm not going to understand any more. So try to release that. If nothing else, just say, Babaji Yukteswar, Babaji Yukteswar, Babaji Yukteswar. Just, I'm glad to spend time with you in whatever way. And even if the whole book sounds like Sanskrit to you, it isn't. But in any case, I'll try to do the best I can with the subject. We're going to begin with a video of Swamiji speaking on this subject. And it'll be nice for us to set the tone with him. And it's about 20 minutes or so long. So just get comfortable, and we'll start that now.
Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurureva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Today I'm going to go into a subject that is controversial. Because I know that in India the tradition is that we're sinking deeper and deeper into Kali Yuga. And in fact my Guru's Guru, my Param Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, he was not only a great master but also a great astrologer. And he discovered that there's been an error in the reckoning of the yugas. It's a very interesting subject. I hope you'll bear me out because it will go against what many of you believe. And yet, the facts square with what he taught, not with what is generally believed. The general belief is that we're sinking deeper and deeper, only 2,000 years into Kali Yuga, and it will go on for another 430,000 years. He said, no, we've actually entered Dwapar Yuga already. Let me read you. Please keep an open mind because it's a fascinating subject. And in fact, it gives us hope too. But as I said, most of all, it squares with the realities that we see around us. The history of the world is very different from the version official archaeology presents. As Swami Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, explained, the earth passes through great cycles of time as the solar system's position changes relative to our galactic center and to certain so-called fixed stars. The galaxy itself rotates very slowly, if 170 miles a second can be called slow, over a period of 200 million years. The sun, again, as Sri Yukteswar explained, moves in orbit around a dual. This dual has yet to be discovered by modern astronomy, but so many other facts he claimed have been verified since his book, The Holy Science, was published in 1894, that one would be safe, I believe, in accepting his explanation in its entirety. The time required for the Sun to orbit around its dual is, Sri Yukteswar stated, approximately 24,000 years. The general level of human consciousness changes according to the Sun's position during this orbit, relative to both its dual and the galactic center. Swami Sri Yukteswar found by careful study and also by deep intuitive perception that major errors had crept into the Hindu almanacs during a time when the earth was passing through the darkest of 4 ages called Kali Yuga. During that period, human awareness was at its dimmest. We are now ascending again, he said, toward increasingly clear understanding and sensitivity. This fascinating claim corresponds with many more recently discovered facts in astronomy and physics, and also with known facts of human history. The whole concept cannot be explained here at length, for it is incidental to the subject of this book, but it is important enough to our theme to merit at least a brief explanation. It figured largely, though sometimes only as a backdrop, in what the Master taught. For more information, the reader is referred to Sri Yukteswar's book, The Holy Science, and to Paramhansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. Vyasa Steinmetz is also writing a whole book on this subject. Suffice it here, then, to point out a few of the many corroborations of Sri Yukteswar's discovery. In terms of mankind's increasing awareness, these include 1. Man's ever-broadening perception of the universe, which before the 20th century was limited to a relatively small star system, of which our own sun was, until the 1920s, considered the center. 2. The discovery at the beginning of the 20th century that matter is a vibration of energy, and people's growing awareness and acceptance since then of this fact. 3. Man's rapidly increasing ability to banish space by rapid travel and instant communication, a capacity that has been increasing exponentially since the beginning of the 20th century. 4. People's growing awareness since the development of radio communication and airplane travel, and man's ability to leave the atmosphere of the Earth and move into outer space, that our planet is relatively small, and that we need to find ways of living together in global harmony. 5. The rapid increase in human awareness, especially since the start of the 20th century, of realities, radio and television waves, for example, that are subtler than sensory perception. 6. A growing dissatisfaction with anything that merely seems reasonable, but that lacks the support of either experience or experiment, and an increasing tendency to challenge all a priori assumptions and dogmas. 7. An awareness rapidly becoming worldwide that the goal of all religions is personal enlightenment rather than some merely outward social upliftment. Now, those are 7 very potent arguments. The descending dark age of Kali Yuga lasted 1200 years, ending in the year 500 AD. It was succeeded by an ascending dark age, the same yuga in reverse, lasting another 1200 years. This ascending Kali Yuga ended in the year 1700 AD, since when there have been countless developments throughout the world, including the following. 1. A revolution toward the use of labor-saving machinery and toward private enterprise, which replaced basically agrarian and land-holding or so-called aristocratic society. 2. The discovery and the increasingly widespread use of electricity. 3. The growing use of atomic power. 4. A complete revolution in man's ways of thinking, and a perception of the universe is no longer earth-centered, but far, far vaster than even a single star system, as well as a perception of reality that is essentially non-personal. 5. Countless revolutionary discoveries previously unimaginable, including radio, television, electronics, laser surgery, and other breakthroughs in every field, so many indeed that it would be impossible to list them all even if one tried. This new age, named Dwapar Yuga, began in the year 1700 AD. Kali Yuga ended with a 100-year twilight or Shandhya or interval between the years 1600 and 1700, during which time the discoveries of Galileo, Newton, and others were made, heralding already the coming new perceptions of reality. Dwapara began with a 200-year dawn or interval of adjustment or Shandhya to the new cosmic rays. It became fully expressed in the year 1900 and will last another 2200 years. The centuries immediately before us will be increasingly characterized by a general awareness of and command over the forces of energy. So different from its predecessor is the age we now live in that people's thinking is already being affected on every level of their lives. Realities that once appeared to be fixed and immutable are perceived now as endlessly mutable. It is possible today at least to envision a loaf of bread being dissolved into the energy of which it is a manifestation and remanifested as a bar of gold. In religion, theology dominated churches with their rigidly formed systems and dogmas are yielding increasingly to a more flexible view of truth. Kali Yuga consciousness is gradually fading as night fades to dawn and then daylight. With this change, man is beginning to consider his former anthropomorphic concepts of God as too droll to be taken seriously. It was only recently in the 20th century that the Roman Catholic Church forgave Galileo for his claim that the earth moves around the sun rather than the opposite, the sun moving around the earth. In 1633, the church had condemned him for heresy. The differences between science and religion are being perceived less and less as absolute. Church dogmas, of which a prime example is the Christian Trinity, are no longer so tightly packaged as to exclude any possibility of a broader, more universal explanation. Can the Father really be a human figure like the bearded creator whom Michelangelo depicted on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome? Can the Son really be somebody who lived only 33 years on this little mud ball of a planet in a universe so vast as to be no longer conceivable? And can the Holy Ghost really be, as I've seen it depicted, another young man seated reposefully on a stone wall? Ridiculous. Mahatma Gandhi, by means of the song Ram Dhun, popularized the concept in India that Ishwara, the Hindu name for God, one of them, and Allah, the Muslim name, are appellations for the same supreme deity. Paramhansa Yogananda showed that the Christian Trinity has its counterpart in the Hindu term Om Tat Sat. He explained that both stand for cosmic realities. Now, a growing number of people today are finding it absurd to think that a universe containing at least 100 billion galaxies, each one with some 100 billion stars, can have been brought into existence by an anthropomorphic deity. Everywhere the question is asked, isn't it possible that every religion worships the same God and aspires to the same lofty truths? No longer is there a general willingness today to accept what was long held as the justification for all dogmas. It ought to be true, therefore it must be true. The elegance of a theory has ceased to be its supreme justification. The question asked increasingly is, does it work? Because our present entry into a new age was fundamental to much of what Paramhansa Yogananda taught, I've included this discussion here, making it as brief as possible. New ideas always encounter resistance before they are generally accepted. The very concept of cycles of history is foreign to the West. Even in the East, where it has long been accepted, it is new, as Swami Sri Yukteswar explained it. In India, the entrenched notion is that the world is at the beginning of a long descent into an ever darker Kali Yuga, expected to last another 430,000 years. In March of 1900, Sri Yukteswar organized a procession through the streets of the city of Serampur or Srirampur in Bengal, announcing the advent of the new age of Dwapara. Certain bystanders actually protested by throwing stones. Even today, it is difficult to get his unorthodox explanation widely accepted in India. The resistance in that country, that is to say in this country, is on dogmatic grounds. People think because it's always been believed and because everybody's said so, and they say, well, but why do the masters say so? Well, the masters usually go along with certain popular things. They're not there to shake people's faith. They're trying to reinforce it. But Sri Yukteswar was a master who actually put his mind to these things. And, well, I do believe him. I believe him for who he was. I believe him for the fact that the facts support what he taught. In the West, the objection is more to the fact that Sri Yukteswar's astronomical explanations do not correspond in every respect to the modern scientific perception of the universe. Yet his claims are supported by an ever-growing body of scientific evidence. The first objection modern astronomers make to his claim is that a dual exists to our sun. Numerous other stars in our galaxy, however, have been found to exist in pairs. The possibility of our own sun having a dual is not dismissed in modern astronomy and has actually come under discussion by serious scientists in recent years. The second objection in modern astronomy is Sri Yukteswar's identification of the sun's revolution around a dual with the phenomenon known as the precession of the equinox. His explanation is at variance with scientific orthodoxy, which states that this precession is due to a wobble in the Earth's axis. It seems premature to be too dogmatic about anything science claims, since it has had too often to revise even some of its basic tenets. Now, this is a long conversation, a long saying. I'm not going to have time today, but maybe tomorrow I'll be able to finish it because it's, well, to me, it's a fascinating subject. What I've found is that in my study of history, and I've been a student of history and of science, I've seen that all the facts that I know do square with what he said, and besides which they square with what I have seen in my own life, not a sinking, but a rising. There's more and more consciousness of wanting to know God. I see it here in India too. Maybe you feel it. God is what you really want. That's what this is all about. God bless you.
What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is joy? Is it just a dream? Or does joy laugh in every stream? Are the clouds mindless after all? or is joy all nature's theme? God is dead, so men say. Can't they see all life's his play? Not a church binds him as its own, not a creed makes him fully known. Foolish we, if we limit him. Every atom is his throne. What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is love? What is love? Is it love we touch in the flowers?
I just wanted to introduce the singers to you in case they are new to you. You see in the back row, that is Nayaswami Anand, and his wife is Kirtaniji, over there in the blue, sort of royal blue outfit. They're the leaders of Ananda Europe, and they live in Assisi, Italy, and they came to India in 2004 and 5 when Swamiji was filming these shows to sing these songs for the recording. The other man in the back is Nayaswami Dharmarajan, and his wife is Nayaswami Nirmala, and they were the leaders of Ananda India for the first 10 years, helping to get Ananda India started. And then lastly in the gold is Nayaswami Leela, who was Swamiji's cook and housekeeper for many, many years. She has, unfortunately for us, left the body. She left right before Swamiji by, about not quite a year. And so we had this image that she was going to get his house in the astral world or in heaven ready for him to come, and was there to greet him with a cup of tea and so on when he came. So anyway, that's a way we smile about it, because in truth it was very heartbreaking to lose her. But anyway, so that's who they all are, in case you hadn't met them before. Okay, so many things then that Swamiji shared. In fact, he couldn't even share them all, as he said, and he continues on in the next video as well. But the main thing to remember, the proof that we are in Dwapar Yuga, is that if we were in Kali Yuga, we wouldn't even know it. We wouldn't even be talking about any of this. In other words, we've become smart enough to sort of ask, hey, what's going on? And to be capable of understanding more. And so that's the greatest proof in itself. There are so many other proofs that we are even aware of energy, which is the hallmark of Dwapar Yuga. Why talk about any of this, in addition to the fact that it's in Sri Yukteswar's book, is because this, as Swamiji said, really was the backdrop, the foundation for Master's teachings. And at the very least, you can think of it as the energization exercises require a clear understanding of the concept of energy. We can't call them the muscle and bone exercises. They're the energization exercises. And so even in the Festival of Light, we talk about how these teachings have come due to man's increasing awareness that matter is only a form of energy, or a manifestation of energy. And so this whole word energy is really the key to Master's presentation of these teachings, to Kriya Yoga, coming back into the world at large. And so it's really central. And so what is this Dwapara Yuga, and what was Sri Yukteswar's explanation of it? That's what we're going to go into today. But first, I want to leap to the punchline. I have a PowerPoint slideshow here with a few images, because I'd like you to just be clear on what the answers are to all of these things, and then we can go through how Sri Yukteswar explained them. So bear with me for a few slides. I'll send these out to you later. But why don't we start the show here? So there are a few things to remember now. So there are 4 ages, 4 yugas, and let's start at the bottom here. Oh, it actually shows them. Okay, go ahead, press the space bar. So, 2 more. Great. So let's start at the bottom. Kali Yuga, the material age, meaning matter is the foundation of everything that we know. 1200 years is how long it lasts. Why? Well, we'll get into that. But first of all, it helps to know where we're going with all of this. Next, Dwapar Yuga, the second age, the electrical age, or the age of energy, is 2400 years. Treta Yuga, Treta meaning third, is the mental age, the age of mental power. The mind is the fundamental reality, or consciousness, is 3600 years. And then Satya Yuga, the spiritual age, that everyone knows that spirit is actually the fundamental reality, is 4800 years. Now you may say, well, I already know that spirit is the fundamental reality, and I'm glad. The thing is, in Satya Yuga, everybody knows that. You see, in other words, the world as a whole is more spiritual. So even in Satya Yuga, there are criminals doing all kinds of wrong things with perhaps sort of pseudo-spiritual energy. And even in Kali Yuga, there are saints who are one with God. So it isn't a question of the possibility of any other awareness happening, but the general awareness on the planet. So just remember, Kali, 1200 years. Thank God, it's the shortest given how bad it is. Dwapara, 2400 years. Treta, 3600. Satya, 4800. Okay? So far, so good? I really wish I had all of your cameras on or had all of your faces here to be able to gauge either the joy level or the pain level. But I'm going to charge on. So, next. This is really the image to keep in mind. This just takes the numbers that we just saw, 4800, 3600, 2400, and 1200, and shows you the arc of how, in fact, these 4 yugas go together. And so far we have this as, okay, that's fine, but then the real picture, you can hit the next key, is this, that at the end, from Satya descends into Treta, descends into Dwapara, descends into Kali, and then it ascends back up again. This is also something that needs to be clarified from the past. By the way, Swamiji was urging people to keep an open mind, and we had thought that we would encounter great opposition from people saying, no, it's Kali Yuga and so on. And we found that a lot of people are saying, Yugas, that there wasn't even a concept of even what yugas were, much less, we had to sort of first sell them on the fact that there were yugas. And so anyway, that was news to us. So again, Satya descending into Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, and then Kali Yuga descending goes into Kali Yuga ascending. And so Kali Yuga is followed by Kali Yuga again, and then Dwapara, Treta, and Satya. And then after the Satya Yuga is a descending Satya Yuga. So this is basically the cycle of 24,000 years. And the fact that the Earth goes through a cycle of 24,000 years is easily verifiable by astronomy, that there is something, which I'll get into later, that the Earth does that basically gets you back to where you started after 24,000 years. Not because anybody was around going, oh look, that thing has happened again. 24,000 years is a long time. But just for reference, because we sometimes mention it, this word Daiva Yuga or Daiva Yuga is 12,000 years, is half a yuga cycle, meaning each of the 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali, add up to 12,000 years. And in total, the descending arc, the ascending arc, 24,000 years. Okay? And so I'll just pretend that you're nodding. Okay, so we have to improve this picture somewhat. We'll go to the next slide, because in fact, it isn't a two-dimensional image. It's not as if, supposing you start at the top of Satya Yuga, go through the whole cycle, and it comes around again. It isn't as if time resets itself. Really, it's not a circle, but a spiral that you can see in the faded background that there was a previous Kali Yuga and Dwapar Yuga, Treta, Satya, and then we had this, more recent Satya, Treta, Dwapara descending into Kali, ascending into Kali. And so we're back in a Kali Yuga, but obviously we're not back in time. We're just at the same point as we were in the past, but it's different in the sense that time is still going on. If you combine a circle with a line, a linear motion, you get a spiral, because the circle moves, but it is going again in a trajectory. By the way, this is actually how life is for us. We may find that we have gone through a particular karma, a particular test, or a particular emotional issue is up for us. And we work on it, and we wrestle with it, and we gain new understanding, and then we feel free from it. And then, after some time, however long it is, maybe 12 years, maybe 1 year, maybe whatever, suddenly we find that same darn issue is up again. And it can feel like, I thought I had learned my lesson, I thought I had figured this out, I had decided why I wasn't going to do this habit, or have this attitude, or have to deal with this karma, and here it is all over again. And it can feel like we have just gone in a circle and are back to where we started. And it's not true. It's not a circle, but a spiral. We have gone around, but we are at a higher level or a higher octave than we were before, even if it's lined up with similar circumstances. So it's very helpful to keep in mind this concept of spiral, because it happens to us all the time. Not circle, not I haven't achieved anything, here I am back at the beginning. It's not the beginning, okay? It's a spiral. All right, so also in this image we see years are put to this in a way that Sri Yukteswar will explain, because we may say, okay, this is fine to see, but where are we? And so he gives us the years, starting with, let's just say, present. So present is just the beginning of Dwapar Yuga. You see that edge there. And so he says that Kali Yuga ended in 1700. And that the depth of Kali Yuga, when the one Kali Yuga descending ended, and then it began ascending, it was 500 AD. So again, right now, with it being 2020, that was 520 years ago. 1,520 years ago was when we were at the depths of Kali Yuga. And then before that, 700 BC is when Dwapar Yuga descended into Kali Yuga. Okay, just for reference. All right, so we'll go on to the next slide. Speaking of the times of the Vedic scriptures, you see that the Rig Veda was composed starting from Satya Yuga all the way through people were aware of it all the way through into Dwapara, but the Vedas were only written down in Dwapara Yuga. And as you may remember from studying, the only reason why the Vedas were written down was because people couldn't keep them in their minds anymore. They used to be, they say, an oral tradition, that, it was passed down. And people always say writing replaced oral traditions. And in the Western history, they say, because people were so dumb, they couldn't figure out how to write things down. And so they just had to say it orally and verbally. And of course, in India, whose tradition and history goes back into Satya Yuga uninterruptedly, the only country, mind you, that has that, says, no, the rishis said that they couldn't remember everything, and so they had to write it down. Think about it. That's what we do. Don't forget that 3 Thursdays from now you have an appointment, so we just put it on the calendar app. Or somebody says, here's a phone number, 9 Someone was even pointing out how people make funny, they say phone numbers kind of in a funny way. They say 9160611804. You know, and it's true. It's funny pattern. People will say the first few digits, slowly, and then rattle off the rest, and you're struggling trying to keep up to write it down. I can't keep it all in my head, and so. We see here that the Vedas were sort of organized from Treta into Dwapara into their Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. And then in Dwapara Yuga, the rest, the Upanishads, the Yoga Sutras, other scriptures came. And then finally, the point that interests us the most, the Bhagavad Gita came in Dwapara to Kali Yuga. Now, the way this is generally taught is that the essence of the Vedas is found in the Upanishads. And the essence of the Upanishads is found in the Gita. Why? Now, if the Upanishads need to be condensed into the Gita, why did the Upanishads get written in the first place? Why didn't the Gita come out immediately and we got the nice condensed version? Why do the Upanishads have a lot of unnecessary information? No. Even they are a condensation of the Vedas. Are some of the Vedas things that can just be disregarded? You only need to read the sort of cramming study notes. The abstract is given in the Upanishads? No. It's because that's all that man could possibly assimilate mentally. Even now, I don't think all the Upanishads have been translated into English or Tamil. If you really want to read them all, if you can find them, you've got to go to the Sanskrit. That already limits how many people can read it. And beyond that, it's the Vedas themselves, which certainly I don't know that we have them all. Maybe they're somewhere. And it makes it amazing to think of, Dvaiveda as a name, Trivedi as a name, Chaturvedi as a name. Wow, this person has mastered all the 4 Vedas. Well, let's just say I wouldn't want to be someone with that name sitting for an exam, because there's just quite a lot to master. These things were condensed because that's what we needed to be able to follow any of it. Even the Bhagavad Gita, as short as it is, as a scripture, it's very short. And still we find some people unfairly to themselves intimidated by it. There's no need to be intimidated by it. Even this book, The Holy Science, is very intimidating if we want to be intimidated, but we can grasp it more and more. It's a lifetime study. The more you pass through it, the more it becomes familiar. Okay? So keep this in mind, that the Bhagavad Gita, meaning the Mahabharata war, we don't know exactly when the Gita was penned down, but we know when it happened, when the conversation was had, 700 BC, the transition from Dwapar Yuga into Descending Kali Yuga, that's when it happened. Interestingly, because now we're going from Kali Yuga into Dwapara, the same transition, but on the ascending arc. So in a certain way, it matches up to the time of the Mahabharata war and the Bhagavad Gita. So, okay, going on to the next thing now. So again, this is the image you want to remember. This 1200 years of Kali. You don't have to remember the years even, though we'll go over those. But just this Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali, Kali, Satya, Kali, Treta, Kali, Dwapara, Treta, Satya. Okay? And next, he talked about the galactic center. That why is Satya Yuga a spiritual age? Why is Kali Yuga a materialistic age? Why are men generally wiser, more spiritual, and so on? Why do we see even now that there's so much more energy in our brains and in our minds than there was even 50 years ago? I mean, think about it. 50 years ago, there were no cell phones. Hard to believe now. There were no, there was no World Wide Web. How could we even function? There was internet, but just barely. No, maybe not. But it came out in the 70s, I think. It was originally the ARPANET, but anyway, never mind. Yeah, I'm already on one subject that's too deep. So, there wasn't even Amazon.com, There are so many things that we just use in regular life now. There wasn't any of that. And so we see so much that we can do now. And what to speak of 1970, what to speak of 1900, and so on. So So why is Satya, why are people more spiritual? Sri Yukteswar explains, and the scriptures explain, that the earth moves, and the sun with the earth moves closer to the galactic center, the center of our galaxy. And there are rays emanating from the galaxy that generally enlighten mankind. This is in a certain way a little bit related to astrology. If you think of the planets, Jupiter and so on, and Saturn, exerting an influence on people. Remember, it's not the planets that cause bad things to happen to us. It's rather the planets that activate the karma that we have within us. So a planet doesn't do anything to you. If you don't have any karma, then it doesn't do anything. But if you have something, then that the rays from that planet can bring out that karma, and that's the science of astrology, essentially. But so this is similar, though more on a planetary scale, not just a personal scale, that as the planet moves closer to the center of the galaxy, it receives more of these radiations that enlighten the planet, and so on. Okay, so this is an example, this is an image of a spiral galaxy. And just like our own galaxy is a spiral galaxy. These slides, I should say, were put together by Vyasa Steinmetz, who Swamiji was referring to in his book when he was reading Conversations with Yogananda. These are his slides, Vyasa's slides. And you can see in the upper left corner that image of the Yuga cycle, just as a constant reminder. Okay, so the next image, just to remember that what we were sort of seeing the galaxy, a spiral galaxy from above, when we see it head on, it looks more like a dosa. And so you can really you can understand why dosa is so popular, because the whole galaxy is a dosa. We're living on just one big dosa. And so it proves that, in a way, that South Indian food is the most in tune with cosmic realities. And so we have our dosa. Is that an idli in the middle? I'm not sure. But in any case, that we have this pancake, as it's often described, but it bulges in the middle. So that's how a spiral galaxy actually looks when you look at it from the edge. Again, think of the edge of a dosa. And then, let's go on to the next. Now, this is a hypothetical depiction of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, why is it hypothetical? Why don't we have a picture of the Milky Way galaxy? Can anyone tell me? Can you turn on your microphone and say? I can't call on you, so just shout it out. Are they muted? Yeah, but can you unmute yourself? Can we make sure you can? I'd like to ask for an answer for why don't we have a picture of the Milky Way? Why do we just have to make a hypothetical depiction? Huh? Yeah, go ahead.
It's too vast to actually take a picture.
Very good. Thank you. It is too vast to actually take a picture. It's right. What would we do to take a picture of the Milky Way galaxy? We're in the Milky Way galaxy. So we'd have to take a camera and throw it so far out of our galaxy to then be able to look down on it and take a picture. There's just no chance. The camera is still going. It will go on for a long time. How many light years away would it have to get before it could fit the galaxy in its view? So yes, this is why we have to draw a hypothetical picture here. So, as you can see, galactic center is there. And notice the sun is at the outer edge. So, no problem. So we are at the outer edge of the spiral galaxy. So on the one level, on one hand, the bad news is that spiral galaxies are probably more rajasic as galaxies, not even sattvic. At least they're not tamasic. But it's not all that spiritual as far as galaxies go. I mean, we're talking the galaxy, not even the planet. What to speak of the planet? We're on the outer edge of the galaxy, about as far from the center of the galaxy as you can get without falling off the edge. So anyway, om, let's find God and be done with this whole mess. So if you're too dismayed by that, don't be too dismayed, because in fact, certain people have said that the greatest time of spiritual growth can be had during times of transition between yugas, which is this time we're in right now. So high stakes. We've got lots of high winnings available to us. So again, this concept that this is the case, that the sun is at one of the outer arms of the galaxy. So, but as the sun, dragging the Earth with it, moves closer to the center of the galaxy, we get more rays, and that's what causes Satya Yuga. So Satya Yuga is when we are closer to the center of the galaxy. Kali Yuga is when we're farther away. Okay? So again, this is the point, and then we're going to get into how Sri Yukteswar explains all of this to us. But I thought it might be helpful if you had a few pictures and if you also knew where we were headed with all of this. Okay, in the next slide, what we see is just a reminder of looking at the galaxy head-on this way. And then in the next slide, we see the same thing, the galaxy at an angle. And this shows us a wave field radio image. Don't ask me to explain it because I can't. But what it is it shows basically the amount of energy and the rate of energy coming from the galactic center. And this is again looking at the galaxy head on. And you can see that in the middle, there's so much more intense energy coming than from the edges. And so, again, even on a physical level, or at least with physical instruments, we can measure that there's a lot of energy pouring out from the center of the galaxy. Okay, and yet another image shows us as a magnification of the center of the galaxy with all of these amazing, these I think are all these different stars. Remember, a galaxy is just a star system. It's a collection of stars. There are also galactic clusters. Galaxies themselves clump into clusters too. But anyway, yeah, sorry. Well, it's so exciting, but we'll stop there. So this is really amazing to see because what for example, our closest star to the sun, from the sun, the closest star is 4 light years away. Okay? It means if you were traveling at the speed of light, it would take you 4 years to get there. But okay, so 4 light years, remember that's a measure of distance, not a measure of time. And so 4 light years away, there are 2 stars, our star and the star Alpha Centauri or whatever it is that's there. So within 4 light years, this far, you have 2 stars, where we are. In the center of the galaxy, within 1 light year, so 1/4 of the distance, or 1/4 the distance, only 1 light year, there are 10 million stars. So that gives us an idea. Just forget the radiations, just how many stars there are in there. It's amazing. I wonder what life is like on those stars. Again, who cares? Let's get to God. Then you can go check out the stars if you want, but it's much more of a shortcut. But still, it's really hard to believe that 10 million stars, all within 1 light year of each other, and there's nobody alive anywhere else except here. Hard to believe. But anyway, that will not be our subject for tonight. So, let's try one more slide and see what happens. Okay, yes, I did want to show you one more thing because I just can't help it. Because I often ask people, these kinds of pictures, and I found a lot of people saying, no, I don't know what picture you're talking about. Just shifting gears for a moment. We are aware that the Earth has a North Pole and a South Pole, right? I hope I'm not too far out and going. We have an equator, which we are near. The tip of India is 6 degrees north of the equator, so very close to the equator. But besides the equator, which is sort of like the belt of the Earth, we have the top of the head and the bottom of the feet. And so the top of the head is the North Pole. Now, what does it mean by pole? In fact, how do we even know there is a pole? Well, if you go out at night and look up into the sky, you will see stars. That is generally not true in Chennai, but it's true now because so much of the pollution has gone away. And if there's a lot of light that makes it, lights of the city that make it hard to see, but people have said they're seeing more stars than they used to. So if you go out at night and you look in a certain part of the sky, you will see what is called the North Star or the Pole Star. And really why it's called that is because if you were to sit there all night and stare at it, you would see that the other constellations rotate around that star. That star is the only star that doesn't move. All the other stars, you go out in the beginning of the night, and then you go out later, and you see not even just the stars, the moon is even easier to track. The moon was just coming up over the horizon. Now the moon is straight overhead, and now the moon is going down. Forget night. During the day, we see the sun starts out rising above the ocean, goes up overhead, and goes down. So it's moving. And so similarly, the moon moves, the constellations, the stars, patterns, they move. But the North Star, the pole star, doesn't move because in a certain way, the Earth is pointing right at it. And so that's what this photo shows. It's a photo of the pole star. And so in a wonderful place where you can point right at it, what they've done is they've taken a photograph by opening the camera shutter and leaving it open. And when you do that, then normally the shutter opens and closes, and that's how you get a fixed image. But if it opens, then if something is moving while it's open, then that creates this, trail behind it because you see the whole entire thing. So you can see all the stars are rotating around the North Star. Now you may say, well, it's not, there looks to be like a little bit of motion in the middle, and it's true, the North Star does move slightly because we're not pointed exactly at it, but close enough. So anyway, I have often said, how there's this picture of the thing and all the circles of stars all going around it, and that's how you can see it's the North Star. Well, now you've seen it. And so hopefully it is at the very least interesting to you. There's just some things that I can't help but share. Okay, next slide. So the point of all of this is to remember the diagram of the yugas. Not that. So go back, keep going. Oh, there was supposed to be one more slide there, but no. Okay. Sorry? Yeah, so let's go back. Okay, let's go back till we get to the Yuga slide. Just keep going till we get to that, yeah. So this is the image you want to remember, and the numbers you want to remember are Kali Yuga is how long? If you can unmute yourself and tell me how long is Kali Yuga? 1,200. And then, thank you. And somebody else, how long is Dwapar Yuga? Huh? Yeah, somebody else, thank you. And now a third person for Treta Yuga. Okay, Vani. So nice to hear your voice. And a fourth person for Satya Yuga. Okay, I need this. This is really my moral support, so I really appreciate that. Very good. Okay, so, and if you've ever heard the term Krita Yuga, that's the same as Satya Yuga. Okay, so now we know the answer, and this may have been familiar to many of you already, and we've heard that it's in Sri Yukteswarji's book. And so now let us go through the explanation in Sri Yukteswarji's book. What is the point of going through this explanation? We should be able to say, when we meet Sri Yukteswarji, that yes, I have gone through your book and the explanation of the yugas at least once. You see, we always say Sri Yukteswar's theory of the yuga cycles, and it's not Kali Yuga, it's Dwapara, and all these things. But have we really gone through his explanation? Could you just mute the microphones? And so this is how we're going to go through it. So try to follow it with me. If you have the book, it's very helpful to go along line by line. I will do my best to try to make it clearer. He makes it clear, but he doesn't make it elaborate. And so I will try to elaborate a little bit on it just to try to give some connections. But if nothing else, at the end of this you can say, yes, I heard it once. Then again, if you read it again, it becomes more and more clear. Every time I read this, it becomes more and more clear to me. But also, if you need to just close your eyes and let the words brush past like so many Sanskrit slokas or Portuguese slokas, meaning it doesn't make any sense, but I like the sound of it, then that's fine too. But we'll go through it now and we'll try to make it fun. So, Sri Yukteswar says, this is on page, I guess it's page sort of 13, but anyway. A short discussion with mathematical calculations of the yugas or ages will explain the fact that the present age for the world is Dwapar Yuga, and that 194 years of the Yuga have now, in 1894, passed away, bringing a rapid development in man's knowledge. If you remember nothing else, just remember rapid development in man's knowledge. That's good. That's good news. Okay, he says this, his first sentence. We learn from Oriental astronomy that moons revolve around their planets. Right? Okay, that's in fact what a moon is. It revolves around a planet. And planets turning on their axes, remember, North Pole, the pole axis, planets rotate on their axes, good, revolve with their moons, because the moons are with them, around the sun. Excellent. So we have planets rotating around the sun. So far, so good. And the sun, with its planets and their moons, takes some star for its dual and revolves around it, about 24,000 years of our Earth. So this is again, Sri Yukteswar is not claiming there's a dual. He's saying that Indian astronomy tells us that this is the case. This celestial phenomenon causes the backward movement of the equinoctial points around the zodiac. So don't worry, we'll get into that one in a little bit. But basically saying there is a 24,000 year cycle. The sun also has another motion by which it revolves around a grand center called the Vishnu Nabhi, which is the seat of the creative power Brahma, the universal magnetism. Brahma regulates dharma, the mental virtue of the internal world. So, in terms of the pictures we just saw, we can think of this Vishnu Nabhi as it's presented in the scriptures without saying what it is in our I should say modern language, which I don't mean is more modern than the scriptures, because they're the ones telling us about all these things in the first place. Not modern meaning more advanced, but modern meaning common language. This Vishnu Nabhi, we can take it as the center of the galaxy. And that these rays coming from the galaxy, I said, make people more spiritual. Sri Yukteswar is saying, actually they regulate dharma. They make people more dharmic, or less so. When the sun, in its revolution around its dual, comes to the place nearest to the grand center, the center of the galaxy, the seat of Brahma, dharma, the mental virtue, becomes so much developed that man can easily comprehend all, even the mysteries of spirit. Now, how do we know when that is? In order to know, we can say it's fine to know what the Yuga theory is, but where are we, and how does it actually line up with the way we measure time? What year? And so on. So this is Sri Yukteswar's key contribution, because one of them, is that, we can even know what the Yuga cycles are, but where are we in them? Or more properly, when are we in them? That's what he pointed out. He says, we are closest to the galactic center when the autumnal equinox comes to the first point of Aries. So, do I want to explain this now? I don't want to explain it right now, except briefly, and then we'll get into the picture a little more clearly, I think. Is it now? Yeah, maybe it is now. No, not yet. Not yet. So, what does this mean? The autumnal equinox comes at the first point of Aries. I'll explain, but you may be thinking, no, Aries, if you know about astrology, for example, it's the spring equinox that's supposed to happen during Aries. Aries is a spring sign and not autumn, and so it's Virgo that comes in the autumn, and we don't even think much about it, but we so often think of spring associated with Aries, if you associate anything with Aries at all. And so this is the reverse, saying that Aries should come at autumn. But remember, he's saying when we're closest to the galactic center, Aries comes in autumn. And so if we're saying, no, Aries comes in spring, the opposite, well, that's a hint that maybe we are not closest. In fact, we're almost farthest from the galactic center right now. But at least we're even able to talk about these things, which means we're able to think, to use our brains a little bit. So, in Satya Yuga, when we're closest to the center of the galaxy, people are the most advanced. They have the most dharma running through the planet. Now he says, the autumnal equinox will be falling not in Aries at the beginning of the 20th century among the fixed stars of the Virgo constellation and in the early part of ascending Dwapar Yuga. Okay, so I think I have to explain this now. So why don't we go back to the PowerPoint show? Because if I don't explain it now, I'm just going to keep using the words and it's going to be too confusing. So this is the diagram that Sri Yukteswar gives. Let's go back to that black and white diagram. Or no, first to the first slide we haven't seen, which is further down. No, scroll down to many more. Why don't you just start the show and then start moving the arrows? Okay, so, and now for a fast recap, just keep hitting the arrow key. Okay, go ahead. Yep, we're going to go all the way past till we get to the circle of stars. Keep going. Go ahead. Yes, okay, now next one is the one we want. So first of all, what are we even talking about Aries and Virgo and all these things? I'm going to try to make it as clear as I can. So this is sort of looking at the Earth and the Sun from the Earth's point of view, which people say, no, the Earth goes around the Sun, and that's true. But we have to see everything from the Earth's point of view because we're on the Earth. You see, we're sort of stuck seeing it from the Earth's point of view. Now, if you were to go out at night and look out at the sky and see the moon, you might see certain stars around the moon, and you might like to draw them into a particular shape. Say the shape of, what's an easy shape? Well, the shape of the crab. Cancer, the actual stars of the crab or Cancer constellation actually look a little bit like a crab. They're sort of easy to see that way. Gemini also is another constellation that's really easy, or Gemini if you're talking of the flyover. Is sort of an easy thing to see of two stick figures holding hands and so on. So you would see, oh, isn't that funny? The moon is with the twins tonight. And then in 2 more days you would say, oh, look, isn't it funny? The moon is now with the crab and so on. And oh, look, now today, the 2 more days, the moon is with the Leo. Leo looks like a backwards question mark in the sky. It's pretty easy to see and so on. And so in this way, you would see that throughout the month, every night when you went out, you would see the moon passing through certain star shapes, basically every 2 days of the month, roughly. In other words, 2 days it's with those stars, and then after that it's with another set of stars. And then after a month's time, you'd say, oh, look, it's back with the twins again. Not a month literally, but 30 days or 28 days more exactly. You would see that it's with where it started. And so you say, the moon only went through certain constellations in the sky. If you know the Big Dipper, you will never see the moon in the Big Dipper. If you know Cassiopeia, the W that's pretty easy to see at night, or the North Star, the Little Dipper we were just talking about, you will never see the moon there. Or Draco the dragon, the moon just doesn't go there. It only goes among certain constellations. In fact, not only the moon, but if you've ever seen other planets like Venus, which is usually visible right at dawn or at twilight, similarly will be along with the moon. Jupiter, which appears sort of bluish, Saturn, which appears a little yellowish. No, maybe it's vice versa. Yeah, Jupiter's yellowish, Saturn's bluish. They also only appear in certain constellations, these same constellations. And so that's what makes these constellations special, and why they're called the zodiac in Latin or whatever, which is like zoo for animal, and diac like diameter. It means like disc. So it's a ring of animals, you could say. So these people discovered are... So that's what makes these 12 constellations so interesting, is that the planets, from our point of view, and the sun, which you'll never see the sun moving through a constellation because the sun is too bright to see the stars. Unless there was suddenly a solar eclipse, then they would all go away, and then you would say, oh, look, the black spot that used to be the sun is really in the middle of the, whatever it is. We see it here between the twins and the crab, but maybe it's with Aries the bull and so on. Aries the bull, Taurus the bull, or Aries the ram. So, why are there 12 constellations? Because there just are. It's not really why there are 12, like there are 12 months and 24 hours and all those things. It's because there are 12 constellations that these 12 and 24 things exist in our lives. This is where 12 comes from. There are 12 groupings of stars. They're not just randomly fragmented. They really are a cluster and then a space and then a cluster and a space. This has also been seen by many different cultures, which further sort of corroborates that that's how we see things. So there could have been 13 if God, and on some planets maybe there are 13 or 1, who knows. But in any case, for us there on this planet, which is the only planet we're familiar with, there are 12. So what we can see moving through these constellations is not only the moon. This is, by the way, where the nakshatras come from. They're a little bit, they break up these 12 signs into even more sort of further groups of stars. But that we can also say something about astrology. When you were born, where were the stars and where were the planets relative to these 12 constellations? But that's a whole different subject. But according to where does the autumnal equinox occur? And you could say the autumnal yare. The equinox. The equinox, of course, is the first day of autumn or the first day of spring. Neither of which makes much use to us in Chennai because it's always hot anyway, no matter when it is. But we know the first day of summer, but actually in June 21st it isn't as hot as it is on May 21st and even in April, generally speaking. Who knows what we'll see this year with the weather acting so strangely now without so much pollution. So, to come back, you may be more tuned into, again, the first day of spring, March 21st, being the vernal equinox or the spring equinox. By the way, if your microphone is unmuted, if you could mute it, please, it would help us. So the idea that the first point of Aries is supposed to occur on March 21st, what does that mean? Well, what is the equinox? The equinox is the day that the morning and the evening are exactly the same. Where is it? Is it on the Tropic of Cancer? Anyway, I forget. It's easier first to think of the first day of summer. The first day of summer is easy. It's the longest day of the year. So if every day you're measuring how long day is compared to night, how many hours of light and so on, you finally come to, okay, at this day it was the most, and after that it started going down again. That's much easier to measure. The solstices are much easier to measure. If you have a shadow with a sundial, you can easily measure it. But we can argue by extension that suppose you measure the length of the night and the length of the day, and you find that day when they are equal. Well, there are 2 times when they're equal, March 21st, first day of spring, and September 21st, the first day of autumn or the first day of fall. So let's just accept that we have those on the calendar without having to just look and measure times anymore. Somebody else did that. They tell us March 21st, September 21st. We say, okay, fine, I believe you. Thank you. So the point is that when we're talking about the autumnal equinox, as Sri Yukteswar is saying, he says that occurs in Virgo. Now, what does that mean? That means that if, for example, one simple way to say it is that if you are born on September 21st, and is that right? Well, let's not, yeah, I think that's right. That if you're born on September 21st, then the sun would be in Virgo. I mean, you often see that horoscopes, and they say if your birthday is between this day and that date, then you're a Virgo. And they include September 21st. So the thing is, in 12,000 years from now, September 21st will be occurring in Aries. So they will say, oh, if you're born on September 21st, your sun sign is Aries. You see, it changes over time. So where the sun is on the first day of autumn changes over the years, and this is called the precession of the equinox, and it takes 24,000 years to go all the way around. What does it mean? What it means is that if you are born on Earth and you suddenly remember, oh, wait a minute, I don't know what yuga this is. You just have to wait for the first day of spring or the first day of autumn, and then at that time look to see, okay, well, where is the sun? And I'm fudging it a little bit, but let's just say you could. And then say, oh, okay, well, that tells me where in the yuga cycle I am. Okay? Does that make sense? Because it's the best I can do without more whiteboards and blackboards and so on. So Sri Yukteswar, the next slide, he gives us an image. Sorry, it didn't change. There we go. He gives us how the 12 signs of the zodiac, you see at the top Aries and Pisces and so on, they're shown in what would seem to be reverse order, if you notice. But at the bottom is where we are, Libra and Virgo. And so he's saying that right now, the little arrow, you are here, shows us that the arrow represents the autumnal equinox. That's our marker. On the first day of autumn, look up in the sky. What do you see? Virgo. Again, I'm fudging it a little bit, but let's just say that that's what it means. It ultimately does mean that. And so then, so we can say, well, that's fine, that's well known and verified. But he says, but it doesn't just mean Virgo. It also shows you what yuga you are in. And so that's what the outer circle shows. You see Kali Yuga, Dwapar Yuga. It shows that we've just entered into early Dwapar Yuga. And so you see this outer circle matches the colored circle in the upper left corner of the slide that shows Satya Yuga, the whites, descending into Treta Yuga, the red, descending into Dwapar Yuga, the yellow, then Kali blue, then another Kali blue, and then this first little edge of Dwapar Yuga. Okay? And why did I title it Diagram? Because that's the title of it in the book. You just have to love Sri Yukteswar. He's giving us this deep teaching that we've never seen before and generally was forgotten in the end of Dwapar Yuga. And he calls it Diagram. I mean, it's just fantastic. Even this word diagram, dia coming from that same word as diac, circle. So, okay, I'd like to pause here. Let's go on to the next slide and then I'll pause and ask if there are any questions. So this is just a magnification of what we just saw, just zooming in. Sorry, it's a little blurry. So again, the arrow shows us that on the first day of autumn, September 21st, we would see the Virgo constellation. The sun is in Virgo. And then that also corresponds to Dwapar Yuga. That correspondence stays the same. I told you that things change over time. All that means is that the arrow moves. It takes the arrow 24,000 years to go around this diagram. The diagram stays the same. In other words, this point of Virgo always corresponds to Dwapar Yuga. Okay? So it's one way to be able to tell ourselves where we are in the cycle. It's really quite fascinating. I mean, it's not very unlike, suppose you go out of doors and see that the sun is out. You say, oh, it's day. Well, how do you know? Well, because there's light all around because I see the sun. Or you go out and it's night and you call it night because the sun is missing. So in a similar way, it's interesting too, if you do look at the stars, you see they change over the year. and that there are stars you see only in the summer and stars that you only see in the winter. And yet what's funny is that if you stay up late enough, like till 4 or 5 a.m., you end up seeing maybe not the summer stars, but meaning in winter you'll see most of the other stars too, because they do actually come out. It's just that usually people are asleep by then. So anyway, you can also tell what season we are in by what stars you see above, not just by the temperature, which is normally how we tell what season we're in. And so anyway, this is how we can tell what yuga we're in. And it's relevant. There was a yogi who was found buried beneath, a lake that the engineers in India were dredging, true story. And the yogi came out speaking a very ancient form of Sanskrit. They finally found somebody who could communicate with him. And the man said, "What yuga is this?" And so they said it's Kali Yuga because they had thought it was Kali Yuga. It was actually Dwapar Yuga. But yeah, so Prasanna, if you could mute everybody. Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, so you didn't just mute the computer, but you muted the microphones? Yeah, great. So, one second. So in a similar way, just as so this yogi said, "What yuga is it?" And they said, "It's Kali Yuga." So then he said, "Oh, I'm not interested," and so he left the body. But what a thought! What yuga is this? I mean, you might wake up after a long sleep and say, "What day is it?" Sometimes that can happen. If we're up too long or we sleep too long, we get confused. Wait, is it Wednesday? I thought it was Thursday, or I thought it was Tuesday. It's Wednesday already? That's a day. He's asking about a yuga. And so at the same time, it's interesting to say, just as you go out and look at the sun and say, "Oh, it's daytime today," so too, you could also sort of gauge what day of the month it is by seeing where the moon is. When you go outside every day, it becomes interesting because you notice the phases of the moon, you notice how the moon moves in the constellations, which we don't see if you're taking a walk at night. It's fun to see how it changes over the course of each night. But so in the same way, on the autumnal equinox, September 21st, big word, but it just means September 21st, you could look up and see, because that's the constellation I see, then refer to my diagram, I know what yuga we are in. Okay? So keep this in mind also for your next life in case it takes place on Earth in a different yuga. For other planets, you'll have to refer to their diagrams. I'm not familiar with them. All right, I'd like to pause here and ask if there are any questions or comments. And I would like at least 3.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so for example, Treta Yuga, the autumnal equinox will be in Cancer.
Can we go back one slide? Can you all see the slide still? Oh, sorry, let's put the slide back up for everybody. Okay, everybody can see this now? Okay, so looking at this diagram, what you see is, yes, that Treta Yuga occurs when the autumnal equinox, it starts when the autumnal equinox is still in Leo. And then, yes, for the entire sign of Cancer and for the entire sign of Gemini. Now, how many years do we spend in each sign? Well, how many years is the whole cycle? And sorry, Sugantha, but you're just on the spot since you're the one talking. How many years is the whole cycle? 24,000, right. The whole cycle is 24,000. I'm glad for everybody else chiming in. And then, so how many years is each sign? Well, how many signs are there? 12 signs. Thank you, Dr. Sharmila. And so 24,000 years divided by 12 signs gives us 2,000 years per sign. So yes, so the autumnal equinox occurs in a sign for 2,000 years, just to give us a frame of reference when we say all of Cancer, well, that's 2,000 years long. And even from the diagram, we can start to gauge how long each of these things is. You can see how Kali Yuga goes into Virgo, but not completely, and it's slightly more than half of Virgo. We know Virgo's 2,000 years, like all the rest of them, so it gives us a hint that maybe Kali Yuga is only 1,200 years and so on. So we're getting to all of these things. Okay, was that your question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for asking a relevant question. It reassures me that I'm making some sense with all this babbling.
So much I am getting to understand something.
Good, good. Okay, another question or comment?
Gee, this is Priya.
Yes, hi Priya.
That means we have been born millions of years ago and all that from sand or whatever to what we are now.
Yes.
We are not in
I love from sand. I mean, why not? Just be sand. Yeah, diamond, horses, no sand. Yeah, there are days that I feel like I'm still born as sand. Okay, go ahead. So I'm sorry, I just loved your question and you haven't even gotten to it yet.
no, what I'm trying to say is, okay, then we are not all our lives we were in Earth, because if we were in Earth,
Yeah,
maybe we were in Satya Yuga and we would have got enlightened. So every time there is a catch, we are not born in here. Or every time there's a catch, we are born in some Kali Yuga in some other planet. I don't know.
is that your question? Like, is that true?
I think so. Maybe we are born in different planets.
Yeah, so first of all, Swamiji asked Master, are souls who are born on earth now also going to be born in Satya Yuga on earth? Because it just seems rather convenient if you can just wait it out a little bit longer or try to cryogenically freeze your body and then get thawed out in Satya Yuga, then you'll be in the most spiritual age and then it'll be easy to find God. In fact, that's not even true. Because again, in Satya Yuga, as Swamiji explained, it's just that people like us are running the whole planet. The whole planet is basically Ananda Sangha, or the whole planet is yogis. And that's nice, but it's still not God. Everybody's interested in God, but not everybody is in God. First of all, we're still, talking about the physical plane of existence, not even the astral or causal plane. So the physical plane is the least spiritual. And not only that, we're in a Rajasic galaxy, and not only that, we're at the edge of the Rajasic galaxy. But there is hope. So Master said to that question, will people be reincarnated in Satya Yuga? He said, oh no. You go he said, first of all, there are many planets to go to, as Priya is saying, and you go to that planet at that time, or more properly, at that level of vibration which you are in tune with. And so we will basically find a place that is suited to our spiritual development. So I don't think that means we're always born in Kali Yuga on other planets and that we have to go back being sand and all that. But the thing is that we should not feel bad that we're in Dwapar Yuga and maybe it seems that, gosh, we're really stuck in this unmaterialistic place. After all, Master came to this planet. Sri Yukteswarji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Babaji came to this planet. Jesus too, Krishna too. So if it's such a useless place, why did they even bother? The fact that they took an interest in us means we must have something going for us. Otherwise, there's no point except to say, oh, well, good luck. Here, have a Mysore pak. There's no hope for you anyway. So there is hope for us. We had 4 avatars coming just in recent history, and Babaji's still here. So that gives us hope that this is a spiritual time. Would we rather be in Satya Yuga without those avatars coming? I don't think so. But you might not need Kriya Yoga and Satya Yuga, but you still need to find God. The punchline is you can find God now and skip all the rest of this and know a lot more about these things. So really, again, as I said, you can make the most spiritual progress during a transition time of yugas. It doesn't necessarily matter which yugas they are, but at this sandhya or shandhya, this transition or twilight time between yugas, there is a lot of opportunity for spiritual growth. So don't judge yourself by the family you were born into, good or bad, by the poverty or wealth you were born into, or the yuga you were born into. Okay?
Yeah, thank you, Ji.
Okay, thank you, Priya. Nice to hear your voice. Okay, Aprama.
Good evening, Shamila.
Hi, Sharmila.
It's a fascinating subject, as Swamiji was saying, so fascinating, and you also told us a lot of things which are very fascinating. So, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
the spiral form of the yuga that you said is very initially when like last time when you said that 2D did not what is this again we come back. So when you said it is spiral, then that is a big relief.
Oh, good.
So,
Good.
yeah, and I was even thinking, because of the spiral, like we are in Dwapar Yuga, and then because of the spiral, so when we come to Dwapar Yuga again, will there be more advancement in the same Yuga?
No, that's not the case. In other words, the advancement in the next Dwapar Yuga, so if you just hold your breath for 24,000 years and then end up in the next Dwapar Yuga at the same point, it will basically be the same. I don't know if they will have cell phones or if they do, or, but they'll have something like cell phones. And, they might not have Android, but they might have something else. Or, in other words, it will be basically the same. It won't be more advanced. The problem is the descending yugas. We learn all these things, then we forget them all, then we rediscover them all again and say, hey, look, how smart I am. I made an iPhone. Yeah, you know how many thousands and thousands of Dwapar Yugas there have been, and people had iPhones in every single one? So it's a question of remembering what we had forgotten and then forgetting it all over again and then starting again. So it won't be more advanced than this Dwapar Yuga. Okay? But hopefully we will be out of it by then and on to bigger and better things.
The very fact that we are having online classes
Very Dwapara Yuga. Yeah, that's right. The fact that we're even having this conversation proves we're in Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy, the age that banishes space. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, let's proceed with Sri Yukteswarji's explanation. So, after 12,000 years, when the sun goes to the place in its orbit, which is, we can go back to the video now, Prasanna. We can stop. Well, I'm sorry, I still see that. After 12,000 years, when the sun goes to the place in its orbit, which is farthest from Brahma, the grand center. So again, when the sun is at its farthest from the galactic center, this event occurs when the autumnal equinox is at the first point of Libra, as we saw in the diagram. Dharma, the mental virtue, comes to such a reduced state that man cannot grasp anything beyond the gross material creation. So you may remember this whole story of the discussion with Yudhishthira of what stands on, 4 legs and 3 legs and 2 legs and 1 leg, or that Dharma was regarded as a cow that stands on 1 leg in Kali Yuga. It's a cow, right? And it falls over it because it has only 1 leg in Kali Yuga. So it's basically the same thing as another description of these ages. Again, cycles of Dharma. Again, in the same manner, when the sun in its course of revolution begins to advance toward the place nearest to the grand center, Dharma, the mental virtue, begins to develop. This growth is gradually completed in another 12,000 years. So starting from the lowest point, it takes 12,000 years to ascend to the highest point. And thinking of it in another way, if the galactic center is here, it's not really above us, but whatever. And that as we go closer to it, then we get more evolved. And then as we go away from it, we get less evolved. Less dharmic. Each of these periods of 12,000 years brings a complete change, both externally in the material world and internally in the intellectual or electric world, and is thus called one of the Daiva Yugas, or electric couple. Thus, in a period of 24,000 years, the sun completes the revolution around its dual and finishes one electric cycle consisting of 12,000 years in the ascending arc and 12,000 years in the descending arc. Hopefully with the pictures this is clear in your mind. Development of Dharma, the mental virtue, is but gradual and is divided into 4 different stages in a period of 12,000 years. In other words, the 4 yugas. This time of 1200 years during which the sun passes through a 1/20th portion of its orbit. For some reason he likes to give us these fractions of 1/20th. 1200 is 1/20th of 24,000, the whole time that it takes. Is called Kali Yuga. So 1200 years is Kali Yuga. Dharma, the mental virtue, is then in its first stage and is only a quarter developed. The human intellect cannot comprehend anything. I hope that's not how you're feeling right now. Beyond the gross material of this ever-changing creation, the external world. And we know that. That's the hallmark of Kali Yuga, that everything is just matter. The period of 2400 years, during which the sun passes through 2/20ths of its orbit, is called Dwapar Yuga. Dharma, the mental virtue, is then in the second stage of development and is but half complete. The human intellect can then comprehend the fine matters or electricities and their attributes, which are the creating principles of the external world. In other words, atomic power also. Sometimes Dwapar Yuga is referred to not as the age of energy only, but the atomic age, because we understand atoms are the fundamental building blocks of creation, which you must know because I'm saying it, meaning how do we even know these words? Because we've learned it. So this is where we are now. Going on, Sugantha was talking to us from Treta Yuga, so let's go on to Treta Yuga. The period of 3,600 years, during which the sun passes through 3/20th part of its orbit, is called Treta Yuga. Dharma, the mental virtue, is then in the third stage. The human intellect becomes able to comprehend the divine magnetism. The source of all electrical forces on which creation depends for its existence. So again, in Dwapar Yuga, we understand that matter is actually built up of these energy building blocks, atoms. And atoms are made out of protons and so on. So we've got energy. People used to say it's matter. And now we say, oh my God, that's so Kali Yuga. It's actually energy. Okay? But then we get into Treta Yuga, and people are still saying energy, 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 and people are saying, oh my God, that's so Dwapar Yuga. Get with the times. It's all magnetism. Magnetism is actually what creates these energies. What does that mean? Who knows? We're in Dwapar Yuga. We're not smart enough to know these things yet. The period of 4,800 years, during which the sun passes through the remaining 4/20th portion of its orbit, is called Satya Yuga. Dharma, the mental virtue, is then in its fourth stage and completes its full development. The human intellect can comprehend all, even God, the spirit, beyond this visible world. Again, it doesn't mean it's automatic self-realization, however. Now, if you have been mentally tuned out because it's too much, this is where I want you to tune back in. Because this is really one of the gems that Sri Yukteswar brings out that settles this thing once and for all. Manu, a great rishi, illumined sage. You've heard of Manu? I'm sure you've heard of Manu. Of Satya Yuga, okay, so Manu was in Satya Yuga, describes these yugas more clearly in the following pages from his Samhita. So where do we hear of the yugas? From Manu. And so here the Sanskrit is, and it's translated. Now follow this with me. 4,000 of years, they say, is Krita Yuga, Satya Yuga, or the golden age of the world. Okay? So Satya Yuga is 4,000 years. You say, well, no, 4,800. Hold on, we're getting there. So 4,000 of years is Satya Yuga. Its morning twilight has just as many hundreds. Okay, so if it's 4,000 of years, and its morning twilight has this just as many hundreds, meaning 400s. And its evening dusk is of the same length. You have to love these shastras and these riddles. So, in other words, 4,000 years with 400 on one end and 400 on the other end makes 4,800, okay? In the other three ages, with their morning and evening twilights, the thousands and the hundreds decrease by one. For those of you who loved word problems in math and logic puzzles, this must be really fun. And for the majority of the rest of you, I'm sorry. So, we had 4 thousands. Let's decrease that by one. How many thousands do we have? 3. Not so hard. So 3 thousands, with their morning and evening twilights also decreased by one. So 3,000 plus 300 plus 300, meaning the morning twilight and the dusk evening. These are transitions between the yugas. So 3,000 plus 300 is 3,600. 2,000, for the next yuga, with 200 on one side and 200 on the other, is 2,400. And then finally 1,000 with 100 on one side and 100 on the other is 1,200 for Kali Yuga. That fourfold cycle comprising 12,000 years, how do we know it's 12,000? Add them up. 4,800, and so on as it goes. Is there a short way to do that? I think there is, but I think I will not bother you with it. Basically, if you want to know, just factor out the 1,200 and then the single digits add up to 10. That fourfold cycle comprising 12,000 years is called an age of the gods. Okay, good to know what it's called. The sum of 1,000 divine ages constitutes one day of Brahma, the same length as its night. Now that's fascinating, because we've heard of the day of Brahma, and he says that it is 1,000 of these half-yuga cycles. Remember, it's not 1,000 yuga cycles, because he just said 12,000, so that's only half a yuga cycle. So 500 yuga cycles is a day of Brahma. Interesting. Something to contemplate. Maybe for a day of Brahma, because that's how long it'll take to understand it, probably. And the same length as its night, the night of Brahma. Okay, so Sri Yukteswar now continues. So hopefully you've got it. Manu tells us Satya Yuga is 4,800, Treta Yuga is 3,600, Dwapar Yuga is 2,400, Kali is 1,200. Who says? Sri Yukteswar? Illa Manu. The period of Satya Yuga is 4,000 years in duration. 400 years before and after Satya Yuga proper are its shandis, or periods of mutation with the preceding and succeeding yugas respectively. Who cares? We should care, because that's what we just went through, and that's why our world is so crazy right now. Hence, 4,800 years in all is the proper age of Satya Yuga. In the calculation of the period of other yugas and yuga shandis, it is laid down that numeral 1 should be deducted from the numbers of both thousands and hundreds, which indicate the periods of the previous yugas and shandis. From this rule, it appears that 3,000 years is the length of Treta Yuga, and 300 years before and after are its shandis, the periods of mutation, which make a total of 3,600. So 2,000 years is the age of Dwapar Yuga, with 200 years before and after as its shandis. I'm reading through this pretty fast because hopefully this is all clear. If it isn't, just say 2,400, Dwapar 2,400. Yeah, blah, 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 2,400. So 2,000 years is the age of Dwapar Yuga, 200 years before and after are its shandis, a total of 2,400 years. Lastly, 1,000 years is the length of Kali Yuga, with 100 years before and after as its shandis, a total of 1,200 years. Thus, 12,000 years, the sum total of all periods of these 4 yugas, is the length of one of the Daiva yugas, or electric couple, 2 of which, that is, 24,000 years, make the electric cycle complete. Now, so this is, again, just to recap, this is what the yugas are in general. This is how they are. Fine, but where are we, or where do we put our particular date way of measuring time, our years? How do we match that to this? So this is, again, what Sri Yukteswar is pointing out to the whole world, because this was generally lost. He says, from 11,501 BC, when the autumnal equinox was at the first point of Aries, the sun began to move away from the point of its orbit nearest to the grand center toward the part farthest from it. Again, going from Satya Yuga, the best age, down to the worst, on the descending arc. Accordingly, the intellectual power of man began to diminish. Now, this happens over a long time, so you can't sort of say that, oh my gosh, I've had a hard day, maybe I'm going away from the galactic center. No. It takes a lot longer than that. During the 4,800 years which the sun took to pass through one of the Satya couples, or Satya Yuga basically, the intellect of man lost altogether the power of grasping spiritual knowledge. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't grasp spiritual knowledge. We're talking about mankind as a whole, everyone. Do you see everybody walking around outside saying, yes, I want spiritual knowledge? In India and in Chennai, in fact, you see a lot more of it, actually, than in other parts of the world. So we have a lot to celebrate, actually, in this country and even in this city. You know, really, I mean, and I've lived in a lot of cities, and I can tell you, Chennai is very spiritual, really. But generally speaking, and even in general conversations in the home, even with the bhajans playing or the pictures going, there's a lot of talk of other things besides God. But you can still grasp spiritual knowledge. So if you're not sure of it, just do more Kriya. During the 3,600 years following, which the sun took to pass through the descending Treta Yuga, the intellect gradually lost all power of grasping the knowledge of divine magnetism. What is that? Who can remember? Too bad. During the 2,400 years next following, while the sun passed through the descending Dwapar Yuga, the human intellect lost its power of grasping the knowledge of electricities and their attributes. Now, this is something we can start to look back into our history and see. Because remember that although the 1200, we are just entering into Dwapara Yuga proper. And if you go back in the cycle, back through Kali, the other Kali, into the descending Dwapara into Kali, which we're going to come back to in a moment, according to Sri Yukteswar's book, that we could say, okay, there should be certain correspondences between where we are in Dwapar Yuga now, just beginning, and where they were symmetrically, if you think of the circle this way, drawing a straight line across, to the Dwapara into Kali transition that way. I wish I had the diagram, but it's not worth it right now. And so remember, in Dwapara Yuga, they fought with energy weapons. And so, and you could say that now, we could fight with energy weapons. We at least have lasers. They're not always used for energy. But, a lot of our technology we have is in electronics. We have drones and so on. Anyway, let's not talk all about war. But that's what the point of the Mahabharata war was. Now, let's think about it. We have been able to manifest energy, use energy through primarily electronics. There's basically a circuit board or a chip or a little computer in just about everything now. Your phone, your car. There's even little sensors on bridges that can warn people when the bridges are getting too overloaded. There are, in other words, smart bridges, smart rooms, smart everything. And what makes it smart is that it has these little circuit boards. Now, we are harnessing this energy using what? What are circuit boards made out of? They're made out of plastic, silicon, metals. They're made out of things that come from the ground. In other words, they're made out of matter, out of quality properties from the earth. Meaning we used what we learned in Kali Yuga and to then use that to harness that power to get into this age of energy. Fine, that's obvious. But in Treta Yuga, in descending Dwapar Yuga, we hear about all these astral weapons. Right, the Brahmastra and the Nagastra, and Karna was cursed that he would forget the mantra for the astral weapon right at the time that he would most need it, and so on. And the Nagastra, Krishna pushed the chariot and it knocked Arjuna's hat off, but not his head, and all these things. But what were those astral weapons? How did they learn them? They didn't just say, let's see, karam bra cha, boom, and see what happened. No, you had to learn it from a guru who knew it. You see, it could only be passed on because those astral weapons or energy weapons were based on the age that had come before, Treta Yuga. It's in Treta Yuga that all of these mantras and word formulae were composed. And people knew the science of mantra, could create them. But in Dwapar Yuga, people couldn't figure out how to make them anymore, but they knew how to use them. Like Gayatri Mantra, we say and we're told it's helpful, and if you practice it, you feel a purity when you do it enough. But we're not composing new Gayatri Mantras, we're just doing what we're told. That, look, this is a really good thing. The recipe is already fixed, just follow it. So, again, Dwapara Yuga, because time does progress in a certain way linearly, we can only remember so much in the past. And so the past of the descending Dwapara Yuga was Treta Yuga. And so they were able to use those powers from that age. Whereas here, our ascending Dwapara Yuga, we only remember Kali Yuga, so we use energy based on, elements from the soil, materials from the earth, and so on. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. So in that way, because it can seem like a descending arc is really tragic because the earth is getting worse and worse, and the ascending arc is better because things are getting more and more evolved. And maybe that's true. But remember, the descending arc has the great advantage of looking back in history to a more evolved time. You know the truth and you're slowly starting to forget it. But if you can hang on to that truth, especially through meditation, then that can guide you. Whereas in ascending arc, sure, it has the advantage of things are getting better, but actually you're going into the unknown because you're coming out of a relatively unenlightened age. And so when you look back, you don't have the same guidance. Unless, as in India, you can look back so far into the Dwapara and Treta Yugas of the past, which in fact are why the scriptures are what we look to, because they were written in higher ages. One other point to remember, we may celebrate. We're out of Kali Yuga, we're in Dwapara Yuga, thank God, out with that horrible materialistic age. I'm so glad to be in Dwapara Yuga. But remember, which is the most violent of all the 4 yugas? It's Dwapara, not Kali. You would think Kali Yuga would be the most violent, and on one level it is the most violent, sure, on one level, but what happens? You get really mad at someone, so what do? You use the tools of Kali Yuga to go after them. You use a rock. In Dwapara Yuga, you get really mad at someone, what do you use? An atomic bomb. Or a biological weapon. I mean, this virus is not a biological weapon, but we could imagine if it were. My God, what a horror. Chemical weapons and so on. So in Dwapara Yuga, we have much greater energy, but no wisdom to use it. That's the problem. And in descending Dwapara, they had all these great mantras from Treta Yuga that they could have used to create, and instead they used them for war. So Dwapara is unfortunately the most troubled age of all of them. But Master says after this we'll have 300 years of peace, so we can look forward to that if we live to see even one of them. But in the meantime, let's find God. One other point, war on this planet doesn't even end until basically the last part of Treta Yuga. So even though we can say, let's go Treta, we want Treta, still there's war. It finally goes away at the end of Treta Yuga. And do you know why the masters say war goes away in Treta Yuga? Because finally, with enough mental power, the explanation given is everyone can understand each other. Isn't that fascinating? There's no more difference in language. In fact, language isn't even needed verbally because everybody just reads each other's minds. And not only does that mean that there's no separation of language, think about how India as a country has been divided by language. Luckily, it's been brought together a lot now by Hindi, by English, let's say English, but still there's so much that it has been unified with, but otherwise language is such a barrier. It's true in other countries. In Italy, you can drive a few miles and then you won't understand the people speaking Italian in that village. There are so many dialects. So even the whole world has been brought together somewhat by English. But in Treta Yuga, forget languages, you can just read everybody's mind. There's no concept of language. And you can also tell if someone's telling the truth or not. But most of all, there are no more misunderstandings and therefore no more war. Isn't that amazing to think that war only comes from misunderstanding. You may find that that happens not only on a national level, but even on a household level. How many times does an argument happen in the house and it turns out it's just because of a misunderstanding? No, I didn't do it then, I did it then. Oh, well, why didn't you say so? I did say so. No, you didn't. And a whole new misunderstanding about the misunderstanding. Most of the time, if we understand that, we don't get mad. Even if someone's angry, if we understand why they're angry, they have a headache. They've told us they had a headache. They're in a lot of pain. It has made them impatient and they're in pain. We have compassion and we don't take it personally that they're now speaking sharply or shortly with us or ignoring us because they're in pain. So even if they are not necessarily understanding us, we are understanding them. And then there is no war. Okay. In 1200 more years, and I'm sorry the class is going a little bit late, but we've got to get through the Yugas tonight, and then I'll explain what we'll do next in the next class, not tonight. In 1200 more years, the sun passed through the descending Kali Yuga and reached the point in its orbit which is farthest from the grand center. Remember, after the final Kali Yuga, you are as far away from the good stuff as you can be. The autumnal equinox was at the first point of Libra. That's easy enough to calculate astronomically just by looking at the different, astronomical journals or almanacs or whatever they're called. The intellectual power of man was so much diminished that it could no longer comprehend anything beyond the gross material of creation, meaning no electricity. The period around AD 500 was thus the darkest part of Kali Yuga and the whole cycle of 24,000 years. So AD 500 was not a good time to be running around on this earth, unless you were with Buddha or, the other masters, Shankara, who came around that time. History indeed bears out the accuracy of these ancient calculations of the ancient Indian rishis and records the widespread ignorance and suffering in all nations at that period. So here, Sri Yukteswarji is not just saying, here's what astronomy says, and here's what the dating of it says. He says, look at history, just as Swami Kriyanandaji was saying in the video. The facts of history bear out. They support that this was a really dark time, that from which things generally got better, and before which things generally got worse. You see in Egyptian culture, for example, how it started out at a peak and then got worse and worse over time. That's one common example that's known. Indian culture, we have this concept that people before us, like Aryabhata, Aryabhata states the speed of light accurately. Whatever 360,000, whatever per second, I'm not able to rattle off, 3,600,000 miles per second. Anyway, whatever it is, he said it. He said it in terms of yojanas per whatever, but still, if you translate it, it amounts to almost the same thing. How could he know the speed of light? There wasn't Einstein to tell him that there even is a speed of light through the theory of relativity, but he knew. He knew so many things, and so many others did. So we know in India's history that there were higher ages before this. And what to speak of, the Nadi astrology and all these palm leaf manuscripts predicting the lives of people living now. Amazing. Okay, from 499 AD onward, the sun began to advance toward the grand center. So now we're beginning the ascending arc of yugas. And the intellect of man started gradually to develop. During the 1100 years of the ascending Kali Yuga, which brings us to 1599, the human intellect was so dense that it could not comprehend the electricities, Shukshma Bhuta, the fine matters of creation. In the political world also, generally speaking, there was no peace in any kingdom. Subsequent to this period, when the 100-year transitional Shandi of Kali Yuga set in, to effect a union with the following Dwapar Yuga, men began to notice the existence of fine matters, Panchanatan Matra, or the attributes of electricities, and political peace began to be established. So again, he's looking at history. In AD 1600, William Gilbert discovered magnetic forces and observed the presence of electricity in all material substances. In 1609, Kepler discovered important laws of astronomy, and Galileo produced a telescope. In 1621, Drebbel of Holland invented the microscope. About 1670, Newton discovered the law of gravitation. In 1700, Thomas Savery made use of a steam engine in raising water, sort of the first use of power, you could say. 20 years later, Stephen Gray discovered the action of electricity on the human body. So all of this within basically a 100-year period, all these discoveries being made. In the political world, people began to have respect for themselves, and civilization advanced in many ways. England united with Scotland and became a powerful kingdom. Napoleon Bonaparte introduced his new legal code into southern Europe. America won its independence, and many parts of Europe were peaceful. You may say they weren't that peaceful, but remember, people, you step outside your home and you just have your head cut off. It used to be much more violent than it is now. Now somebody may go, and say some harsh words, but that's nothing compared to how it used to be. With the advance of science, the world began to be covered with railways and telegraphic wires, and now we would say with cell phone towers. By the help of steam engines, electric machines, and many other instruments, fine matters were brought into practical use, although their nature was not clearly understood. We have to remember that the fact that matter is actually made up of energy was not known at the time that Sri Yukteswar published this book. It only came out in 1900 or 1901 when Einstein published his theory of relativity, special relativity, the first paper, E equals mc squared. Then his second paper on general relativity came out a few years ago. 1900. So it was after this. And then Sri Yukteswar writes, in 1899, on completion of the 200 years of Dwapara Shandhya, the time of mutation, the true Dwapara Yuga of 2,000 years will commence. Isn't that fascinating? He says, in 1899, Dwapara Yuga will begin. Remember, that's 5 years from when he's writing. This was 1894 that he wrote, and yet it's with us now. So he says, look forward to 1899. And it will give mankind in general a thorough understanding of the electricities and their attributes. Such is the great influence of time which governs the universe. No man can overcome this influence except him who, blessed with pure love, the heavenly gift of nature, becomes divine. Being baptized in the sacred stream Pranava, the holy Om vibration, he comprehends the kingdom of God. So if you said, yes, the divine love and the heavenly gift of nature, pure love makes you divine, that's what I want. That is the point. So that if that's what you want to take away from this, take that away. Now, this is also an extremely important point. That's why I have to cover it. The position of the world in the Dwapara Shandhi era at present, 1894, is not correctly shown in the Hindu almanacs. The astronomers and astrologers who calculate the almanacs have been misguided by wrong annotations of certain Sanskrit scholars, such as Kulakabhata of the dark age of Kali Yuga, and now maintain that the length of Kali Yuga is 432,000 years, of which 4,994, so 4,994 have in 1894 passed away, leaving 427,006 years still remaining. A dark prospect, he says, and fortunately one not true. The mistake crept into the almanacs for the first time around 700 BC. So remember, 700 BC was the time of the Mahabharata war. During the reign of Raja Parakshit, just after the completion of the last descending Dwapara Yuga. At that time, Maharaja Yudhishthira, somebody you know, noticing the appearance of dark Kali Yuga, this is generally known, that Yudhishthira looked at the autumnal equinox and said, oh no, look, it's in the wrong sign, we're entering Kali Yuga, let's get out of here. made over his throne to his grandson, the said Raja Parikshit. Maharaja Yudhishthira, together with all the wise men of his court, let's hope that we were among them, retired to the Himalaya mountains, the paradise of the world. And thus everybody after him also retired to the Himalaya mountains once they got any sense. Remember that Swami Pranabananda, when he was reborn, left his village at the age of 6, heading for the Himalayas. So they all left. Thus, there was none in the court of Raja Parikshit who could understand the principle of correctly calculating the ages of the several yugas, because all the smart guys went to the Himalayas, and everybody left was basically not that smart. Hence, after the completion of the 2400 years of the then current Dwapar Yuga, no one dared to make the introduction of the dark Kali Yuga more manifest by beginning to calculate from its first year and to put an end to the number of Dwapara years. Why? Look, if you're going to make a mistake, you're going to make it in Kali Yuga, the darkest and the least enlightened of all ages. So, Yudhishthira says, look at the equinox. It's Kali Yuga, bad Yuga, let's go. Polama? And so they left. And so then the others who said, where did Yudhishthira go? He went to Himalayas. Yen? Kali Yuga. Oh. Nobody wanted to admit that it was Kali Yuga and say, okay, we should say that this is year 1 of Kali Yuga. They knew that it was 2400 years of Dwapara past. According to this wrong method of calculation, therefore, the first year of Kali Yuga was numbered 2401. It should have been numbered 1, but instead it was added on to, along with the age of Dwapar Yuga. So, in AD 499, remember that's the bottom, when 1200 years, the length of the true Kali Yuga, was complete, the sun had reached the point in its orbit farthest from the grand center, meaning as far away from the center of the galaxy as you can get, when the autumnal equinox was at the first point of Libra in the heavens. We know all this, that's the bad part. The age of Kali, in its darkest period, was then numbered by 3600 years, meaning the 2400 years of Kali, and then not restarting at 1, which you should have done, and then adding 1200 more years of, at least they could count years. I mean, we got to give that to them. They didn't lose that. But it's 2400 plus 1200, so we have 3600. It should have been, he says, 1200. It was marked 3600 instead of 1200. This has a point. We're getting somewhere. With the commencement of the ascending Kali Yuga after AD 499 or 500, because Sri Yukteswarji says, what's a year? The sun began to advance in its orbit nearer to the grand center, and accordingly, the intellectual power of man started to develop. So we had been in 2400 descending Dwapara. They added on the 1200, got to the lowest point of intellectual development, and now they're starting to rise up again. Therefore, the mistake in the almanacs began to be noticed by the wise men of the time, who found that the calculations of the ancient rishis had fixed the period of one Kali Yuga at 1200 years only. So they said, now wait a minute, if a Kali Yuga is only 1200 years, why do we say 3600 years? But as the intellect of these wise men was not yet suitably developed, they could make out only the mistake itself and not the reason for it. I mean, Sri Yukteswar is only pointing out the reason of it now in Dwapar Yuga. By way of reconciliation, they fancied that 1200 years, the real age of Kali, which they had to figure out, but wait a minute, no, that mathematically it doesn't add up, were not the ordinary years of our earth, as Manu says, but were so many Daiva years. They made it up to try to reconcile the math and created this thing called Daiva years, the years of the gods, consisting of 12 Daiva months, of 30 Daiva days each, which basically, and with each of those days being equal to one ordinary solar year of our earth. In other words, 30 days times 12 years is 360. So they said that each year of a yuga is actually 360 Earth years. Hence, according to these men, 1,200 years must be equal to 432,000 years of our earth. If you take 1,200 of Kali, they found that 1,200 years was what Manu said, and you multiply that by 360, a complete invention, but because of this problem in the calculation, you get this famous number, 432,000 years. It's not too hard, right? I mean, if you multiplied it by 10,000, it would be 360,000, and you add in the, you add in the 1,200. I mean, anyway, sorry. I won't go through the math. It's pretty easy. If nothing else, just get the calculator. So, this is where this famous wrong number comes from and why it came into being. In coming to a right conclusion, however, we should take into consideration... Okay, so let's just stop there. So, this is where anyone who says we're in Kali Yuga, you can just point them to read this, if they want to. If they say, I will not read it because it will poison the purity of my mind, don't argue with them. There's no point in arguing over these things. Let people think whatever they want to think. Let's just meditate and find God. Encourage them. My spiritual teacher teaches me this, and I do these practices, and he says it's Kali Yuga. Fine. There's no point in proving that it is Dwapar Yuga. The Yuga is what it is. So it doesn't need us to defend it with emotion. It just simply is. It's sort of like saying that it's not whatever time it is. I'm embarrassed to admit what time it is. It just is that time. And so, however, if somebody's interested, you can point this out to them. But know in your mind that if someone says, no, it is not Kali Yuga, it is Dwapara Yuga, they are not arguing with you, they are not arguing with me, they are not arguing with Swami Kriyananda, they are not even arguing with Master or Sri Yukteswarji. They are arguing with the one who invented the Yugas in the first place, Manu. So if you want to argue with Manu, good luck. But we tend to take what Manu says in the Samhita as the truth, especially writing as he was in Satya Yuga for all sakes, of all yugas, for gosh sakes, whatever. Anyway, so it's Manu who says a year is a year. And it was these guys in Dwapar Yuga, in Kali Yuga, who knows, maybe we were among them trying to figure this out. The calculations are wrong, but we still couldn't, they weren't smart enough yet to figure it out, blame it on the Yuga, and so that's where this whole invention came from, to try to reconcile the false calculation of the past with what they knew had to be true. Now, Sri Yukteswarji is correcting even that mistake. So, he finally says, though, to finally settle it, in coming into a right conclusion, we should take into consideration the position of the vernal equinox at spring in the year 1894. The astronomical reference books show the vernal equinox to now be 20 degrees, 54 minutes, and 36 seconds. That's how you measure distance in a circle. Distant from the first point of Aries, the fixed star Revati. And by calculation, it will appear that 1394 years have passed since the time when the vernal equinox began to recede from the first point of Aries. All you have to remember is 1394. During 1200 years, the length of the last ascending Kali Yuga, from deducting, 1200 years, the last ascending Kali Yuga from 1394, we get 194. 1394 minus 1200 is 194. To indicate the present year of the world's entrance into the ascending Dwapara Yuga. So in 1894, he is saying it was actually 194 Dwapara. The mistake of older almanacs will thus be clearly explained when we add 3600 to this period of 1394, and we get 4994, which according to the prevailing mistaken theory represents the present year 1894 in the Hindu almanacs. At this point, with the sizzling of the brain matter, if you have it, it's a little too hard to follow, and it's helpful to read it because you can see all the numbers in front of you. But it's amazing how Sri Yukteswarji basically shows that according to their calculation, it's 4994, and in fact, according to the same logic, but correcting this one mistake, it's actually 194 Dwapara. And so it's thrilling to see how he's not really proving them wrong. He's saying, according to their theory, see, which is mistaken, but see how the numbers add up. But actually making this correction, this is the true number. All just using the math and the observation of the equinox. Things that anybody can verify. Not anybody can put together intellectually the way he did. But still, these are easily verifiable things. And so it's just thrilling to the mind if you can stand it. So, we're almost done. Referring to the diagram given in this book, the reader will see that the autumnal equinox is now in AD 1894, falling among the stars of the Virgo constellation, and therefore in the ascending Dwapar Yuga. And we saw that with, remember the black and white diagram with the little arrow pointing that where we are? So, now we are moving away from this whole subject and talking a little bit more broadly. So these paragraphs, these final paragraphs should be a little easier to digest. In this book, certain truths, such as those about the properties of magnetism, its auras, different sorts of electricities, etc., have been mentioned, although modern science has not yet fully discovered them. It took a while for modern science to catch up with Sri Yukteswar. The 5 sorts of electricity. Sorry, 1 second. The 5 sorts of electricity can be easily understood if one will direct his attention to the nerve properties, which are purely electrical in nature. Each of the 5 sensory nerves has its characteristic and unique function to perform. The optic nerve carries light and does not perform the functions of the auditory and the other nerves. The auditory nerve, in its turn, carries sound only, without performing the functions of any other nerves, and so on. Thus it is clear that there are 5 sorts of electricity corresponding to the 5 properties of cosmic electricity, which, as he says, are manifest in our bodies as the 5 sensations, the 5 senses, transmitted through the same electrical system. Isn't that interesting, how cosmic our bodies are? Because we just think, yeah, we have 5 senses. Why 5? He says, look, these are the 5 cosmic currents of electricity. It's really amazing. This is something I really enjoy, this next sentence. So far as magnetic properties are concerned, the grasping power of the human intellect is at present so limited that it would be quite useless to attempt to make the matter understood by the general public. It's just so great. We say, yeah, Treta Yuga, you said it's about magnetism, and that's even better than electricity. Tell me about that. He says, it's useless. You just wouldn't understand it. There's no point in talking about it. The intellect of man in Treta Yuga will comprehend the attributes of divine magnetism. The next Treta Yuga will start in AD 4099, so we'll have to wait until then. There are indeed exceptional personages now living who, having overcome the influence of time, can grasp today what ordinary people cannot grasp. And Sri Yukteswar is of course referring to himself, to Master, to Babaji. Lahiri Mahashaya, I think 1894. Yeah, Sri Lahiri Mahashaya was alive at that time. I think he left the body in 1895. So anyway, so he says there are people, and Pranabhananda Swami and others, there are people who can grasp it, but he says, but this book is not for those exalted ones who require nothing of it. In concluding this introduction, we may observe that the different planets, exercising their influence over the various days of the week, now that is somewhat known. I mean, at the very least, people know Shanivar, Saturday, or what is it called here, Prasanna? It's just Shani, not Buddhan, Tingal, and Chava, and all these things. But what is the full word for Shanivar in Tamil? Not just Shani. Huh? Shani Kira, that's right. Kira, what is it? Kiramai. Kiramai. Yeah, Shani Kiramai. So we know that that's the Shani day, and that we should go to certain temples to, was it Shiva temples on Saturn's day? Yeah, okay, well anyway, some people do that. No matter what, do not mess with Shani. You do whatever you're supposed to do on that day. But he says the planets have lent their names to their respective days. I mean, I assume that's obvious because that's true. That's true in Tamil, right? Each of the Tingal and the Buddhas and the Chavas and all those are the actual planet names. Yeah, so that it's not obvious in English, but if you know the origin of the names, like Wednesday is supposed to be for Mercury, Buddhan. Wednesday comes from the Norse, the Nordic language, Woden's Day, and Woden is the name of Mercury in that language. Similarly, the different constellations of stars, having influence over various months, have lent their names to the Hindu months. Revati, is that considered a month? Revati Nakshatra, that's a day of the month. Anyway, so he's saying the Hindu months are named after the constellations. I'll have to, Prasanna is nodding and Sri Yukteswar said it, so between Prasanna and Sri Yukteswar we're on pretty safe ground. Each of the great yugas has much influence over the period of time covered by it. Hence, in designating the years, it is desirable that such terms should indicate to which yuga they belong. So he's saying, look, this is the logic so far, and I think it's about time that we start naming the years according to the yuga that they're in. As the yugas are calculated from the position of the equinox, the method of numbering the years in reference to their respective yugas is based on a scientific principle. In other words, I mean, our years right now are actually based just on history, and the year 0 being around the time of the birth of Christ. And so we just see, for convenience, we all sort of use that year so we don't argue. But the Tamil year is different and the Hindu year is different. We go along with the Gregorian calendar, which gives us the year 2020, just so we can all communicate. But secretly we have our own numbering system. And he's saying, base it on a scientifically observable event, like the equinox and the position of the equinox. And so, doing this, its use will obviate much inconvenience which has arisen in the past, owing to the association of various eras with persons of eminence. He says that politely, rather than saying Jesus. And instead, it should have been done with celestial phenomena of the fixed stars. We therefore propose, we, meaning Sri Yukteswar and God, therefore propose to name and number the year in which this introduction has been written. I mean, think about it. In the introduction of your book, you decide to name what year we are in. Pretty amazing. As 194 Dwapara, instead of 181894, to show the exact time of the Yuga now passing. This method of calculation was prevalent in India till the time of Raja Vikramaditya, when the Samvat era was introduced. So he's saying, look, don't take my word for it. This is how they used to do it. As the Yuga method of calculation recommends itself to reason, we follow it, because it is reasonable. And recommend that it be followed by the public in general, not the public that threw stones at Sri Yukteswar when in 1900 he declared that it was now Dwapar Yuga. So Dwapar Yuga was 1900 was 200 Dwapara Yuga, because that's when the transition period of the twilight, the Shandhya, the 200 years ended, and so we entered into Dwapara Yuga in 1900. So now that that was 200 Dwapara Yuga. So now that we are in 2020, 120 years later, it is 320 Dwapara, you could say, is the year now. Does that sound right? Yeah, okay. I sometimes don't trust myself when I do it too fast. So we could very well say it's 320 out of 1200. Now, you may argue that, oh my God, out of 2400, not 1200, out of 2400 total. Now you may argue, my God, Kali Yuga is 1200 years, it's not that long. But, Dwapara is 2400 years, it's so long. Treta is 3600 years, so long. How do people even live during these yugas? And 4800 years of Satya, it's good, but long. But keep in mind that the age of people gets longer also in each yuga. So, Master explains that the ideal lifespan, if you lived as well as you should, which people don't, in Kali Yuga is 100 years. I think Manu says this too. So people didn't live 100 years. They would live 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Now we're finding people are living 100 years and beyond, much more so. I mean, how often do we meet people here who say, can I take your class? I'm 75 and I have arthritis. I can't do a lot of yoga postures, but I could do something and I can sit. Can I come to your class? We say, yes, yes, the classes are very gentle and you can come. They say, oh, good. Do you think my mother could come too? I mean, it's just shocking to us that we've got 75-year-old people taking care of their parents because people are living longer and longer now. In Dwapar Yuga, the ideal age is 200 years if you make it and you live healthy and meditate and all those. So if you think about it, well, that's interesting. 100 is 1/12 of Kali Yuga, 1200 years. 200 is 1/12 of 2400 years. And you can guess, in Treta Yuga, the ideal age is 300 years, which is again 1/12 of 3600. And Satya Yuga, 400 years lifespan, is 1/12 of Satya Yuga, 4800 years. So every human lifetime, ideally, if you do it right, is 1/12 of a yuga, whatever yuga you're in. So it makes the yugas a little more graspable in our minds. That if you incarnated 12 times in a row, played your cards right in every lifetime to live the longest amount, after 12 lifetimes you'd be in a new yuga. If you made use of those lifetimes and learned all the lessons enough to graduate, to be spiritually evolved enough to be allowed to incarnate in that next yuga. Okay? So for the final paragraph and for the last 4 or 5 of you who are still hanging on here in the broadcast, now in this 194th year of Dwapar Yuga, the dark age of Kali having long since passed, the world is reaching out for spiritual knowledge and men require loving help from one another. The publishing of this book, requested from me by my holy Param Guru Maharaj Babaji, will, I hope, be of spiritual service. And again he signs it, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Serampore, West Bengal, the 26th Falgun, 194 Dwapara. And then in parentheses, for those who are still using the antiquated system, AD 1894. Okay. The class is officially over. For some of you it may have ended long ago, and I'm sorry it went on so long, but this is not a discussion we can pause and then take up again. Just to let you know, I'm going to have to extend the class series by an extra week because we still have 3 chapters of the book to cover. I don't think we can cover chapter 2 today. I'm joking, there's no chance of it. And I don't want to squeeze 2 chapters together. So the yugas in the introduction basically comprised a whole class in and of themselves. So I think we're going to have to need 3 more classes. Not 2 more. 3 more for each for one of the remaining chapters. Does anyone dare at this point have a comment or a question after all that I've brought you through? And sorry it took so long, but it was either this or nothing. You have now heard it. You have heard Sri Yukteswar's calculation. You have heard him explain how it came to be that this is not Kali Yuga, where the 432,000 horror number came from, why it was wrong, how it came to be wrong, that we're in Dwapar Yuga, how we know we're in Dwapar Yuga by just looking at the stars at night. Fascinating. And how the Yuga cycles go, and how Manu was the one who told us what the Yuga cycles are in the first place. So, having said all that, any comments or questions? Okay, Vani, go ahead. Prasanna, you may need to help her. If you can't unmute yourself, we'll try to set it up so you can. And so go ahead. Oops, the speaker went off, sorry. Yeah. Hold on, Vani, sorry. Even the speaker did not survive this discussion. Okay, Solinga.
Thank you very much for the
It warms my heart to have somebody say thank you. I'm glad. I wasn't sure whether to ask for your comments or to just issue a blanket apology. So anyway, thank you. Okay. Anybody else like to share a comment or a question? Yes, go ahead, Shantakumar. Nice to see you. Shantakumar? Oh, sorry, one second. Oh, we can't unmute you for some reason. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the wonderful class from beginning to the end. You kept us hooked, and you have more simplified it much more. Instead of reading from the books, it is very good to hear from you. And you mentioned that it's very few slides. That itself is huge actually for us.
Oh, good.
It was very fascinating when you said that India is the only land that has history till Satya Yoga and till Kali Yuga, two things.
Very good. Very good.
It's very astounding.
Uh-huh.
Only one point I felt where when you said Dwapar Yoga is the most violent thing.
That's the bad news. Yeah.
So I was thinking we are on the upper scale, like we are something it will be good for the other. It's really fascinating how at least we are good enough to know this. Very few are very ignorant and very happy are
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shantakumar. That's a good point. And that's part of the trouble that we see in the world right now, is because Kali Yuga is still hanging on. And that's really what the battle is right now that we're seeing. Not only light and darkness, but Kali Yuga and Dwapar Yuga. Remember, Kali Yuga isn't always bad in the sense that in descending Dwapara into Kali Yuga, there is a battle between Dwapara and Kali then too, but Kali wins. And so that's why the rest of us just head up into the Himalayas with Yudhishthira, because there's just no point. But then, now that we're coming out of Kali Yuga into Dwapara, there's that same battle again, but this time Dwapara is going to win. But the problem is Kali Yuga is holding on with fixity. Some people saying, my religion is the only religion. My language is the best language. My country is the best country. My party is the best party. We still have people not allowing other people to exist and becoming very narrow and fundamental in so many cultures, religions, countries. And that's really what is causing this explosion, because Kali Yuga is not going quietly. And so, but so much of the world is saying, no, we want to see, as Swamiji was saying in the video, a connectedness behind mankind, a universal, so many of us all feel the same way. If you cut us, do we not bleed? And so on. If our feelings are hurt, do we not all cry? We all breathe the same air. Looking for that unity among forms. That's one of the hallmarks of Dwapar Yuga. But we are going to, unfortunately, have to go through more disturbance before Kali Yuga is finally finished and finally gives up. Because it can't win, because the Yuga is against it. Whereas it did win, a bunch of years ago when Dwapara fell into Kali. But now it's Dwapara's time to emerge again. So that's part of why this is a disturbed time also right now. Later into Dwapara, it'll still be violent, unfortunately, at times. Master said there'll be 300 years of peace, as I said, so there'll be some good times. But at least people won't be fighting over whether it's Kali Yuga or not. So thank you for that. Anybody else with a comment or a question? Looks like we've got some hands up. Yeah, go ahead.
Jude here.
Jude, hi. Hi, it's nice to see you.
In the thing you explained today, you were saying this cycle of birth, or for the birth, it's a clockwise run. See, from Satya Yoga, Treta, Dwapar, Kali, again, clockwise run. In this world we are traveling. Am I correct, sir?
In this world we are traveling means?
Yeah, in these yugas.
Yes, we are going through this yuga cycle, definitely.
You are not getting any cross cut, like no. You have to travel each cycling.
Do we as souls have to go through each of these yugas? Is that what you're asking? No, we do not. I hope for you that through Kriya you attain Samadhi in this life and then you're done with all yugas. Through yoga you can banish yuga. Okay? So yeah, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I haven't even passed my 12 standard exam. What's my 1200th standard exam? Plus my Dwapara 2400 exam. No. You just practice your one get over the ego exam, and then you're done. Okay? Then from heaven in Sri Yukteswar, with Sri Yukteswar, you can laugh at all of us still stuck on earth and making our way through the yugas. Okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Good point to make clear. And there was something else you said that made me wonder about another question for a moment. The descending arc, I've lost it. Anyway, there is something else to mention. Oh, one other thing that's funny though, keep in mind, in Dwapar Yuga we banish the delusion of space. And I think you can see how we're doing that. We're even talking across all these different places within the same city. And in our level 1 class on Sunday, we had someone from, or was it Saturday? We had someone from Singapore, someone from Nagarkoil, someone from West Africa, Gabon. I mean, it was amazing how they were all just like you appearing on the screen. Hi, but they were from so many different places, even in this planet. We're definitely banishing the delusion of space. We're able to move around the planet, before coronavirus anyway. We were able to move around the planet very quickly. And it is in this yuga that we will leave the planet and move to other travel in space. We're already seeing that. We're talking about the first manned mission to Mars and so on. But it is in Treta Yuga when you banish the delusion of time, which is hard to understand. But you can travel forward and backward in time. And so you can visit any yuga you want at that point. I don't know why in Treta Yuga you wouldn't just jump forward in time to Satya Yuga and then just live there. Maybe there are certain laws against it. I don't know. It starts to bring up funny questions. But in any case, so in Treta Yuga you have access to all the yugas, so we're told, by being able to travel in time. And in Satya Yuga you can see everything. In Satya Yuga you can travel into the astral world and back, as I mentioned, without even losing your body. So it could be a lot of fun, but still, that's all it is fun. Better to find God, that's even more fun. Okay, any other comments or questions? We've got some. Ilango, you were saying?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is one of the very good session we had. I have attended a few sessions in the past also, but I feel that this is the first topic you have covered very, very elaborately.
It was nothing if not elaborate, yeah.
The slides have really helped a lot.
Oh, good.
I do not think, or I do not remember whether we had used the slides in the past, but today's slides are really, really
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ilango. Yeah, we had a class in the Yugas in 2015. So for those of you who were there and with those with exceptionally good memories as Ilango, then yeah, it's something to refer to. These slides came from that class. Okay. Hi, Jayashree.
So today's session was very nice. I liked it very much. It was quite, we all learned new things regarding this, especially the slides, which were very
Good.
informative and all.
Good.
But apart from that, I liked it the way you taught us. It was very entertaining.
Good.
I found it very funny plus educative. It was very good.
Good.
And whenever you said King Yudhishthira, I was reminded that King Yudhishthira's another name is Dharmarajan. So whenever you say that, I often get that. And today's it was totally good. I liked it very much. All
Very
those
good.
slides and which you explained with those zodiac signs, everything was very nice. Thank you.
Very good. Very good, Jayashree. Thank you. Nice to see you. Okay, anybody else want to comment? Meena, are you there? Oh, Sugantha, okay.
Yeah, it was actually maybe I couldn't crack this book. So many times I tried to read and nothing went in my head. And it's such a breakthrough. Today's session was.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So really, really amazing because with the all visual whatever you have shown. Very, very thankful for this session.
very good. Well, thank you. Yeah, there's strength in numbers. We need a few allies if we're going to take on this book. And so I'm glad for that. So thank you for sharing that. Gopal?
Yeah, it's a very lucid presentation on such a heavy topic.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And you very so simple in fact.
Oh.
So the other day I said 5% only went to make it. I said now this 95% has come.
Oh, good. Good. Victory. Yes.
I'm really surprised, such in spite of proving it so scientifically, this has not been accepted by people. That is something is very surprising to me.
They will. They will. We just need to get longer in the Yuga. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yes, argued it with such a precision.
Yeah.
And made it so clear to everyone. Why it is not taken?
It's Kali Yuga consciousness hanging on still. That's all. Yeah, they'll get through it. Yeah, but meanwhile, we can count it. But the year we want to calculate is the year of our entering into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That'll be a good year, and then we'll take it from there. But yes, it's true. Yeah, it's very fun. I mean, in Treta Yuga, they'll just laugh that we even had to have this conversation about the yugas to try to explain them. They say, obviously. And in fact, they may come back in time and laugh at us right now, or laugh with us, hopefully, because they can travel in time. What's weird is the people in the past Treta Yuga can also travel in time forward. So I don't follow any of that, but anyway, we'll have a good time. That's probably what Manu did to be able to predict the lies of these people, is just traveled in time and saw. So anyway, not Manu, Brigu, sorry. Okay, other comments. I'm just enjoying hearing this. It relieves me a little bit. For those of you who are still around, Meena, are you there? I see. There.
I really want to thank you, because if not for you, these numbers are not easily comprehensible. So after this session, these numbers are it's nice.
Good.
Knowledge we gain.
Good. Good. I want to let you know that the Kaivalya Darshanam, or the Holy Science, was published first in Bengali. It came out in English in India. I was wrong. I said in 1949 was the first English edition, but it wasn't. It was in 1920 that it came out, or even earlier, but in India. But then the next language, the third language for it to appear in, was French. And so somehow there's a big enthusiasm in French around this. Yeah, so you have a connection that way, since you speak French. So, okay. Anybody else want to comment? Hi, Priya. Sand. We are all sand. That's the lesson I got from today.
In last class, you talked about 4 ideas, right? Word, time, space, and atom.
Yes.
So these yugas, I think maybe they fall under time. That means, is this yugas again a delusion? Illusion or maya?
Yeah, on one level, yes, the yugas are an illusion, but that's in the sense that everything is an illusion. But what we're saying is this is how the illusion works. You see?
That's what I want to
Yeah.
understand. Because
Yeah.
these ideas are all illusion. We have to
Yeah.
raise about all of this.
Definitely.
God. Yeah.
Definitely. Please. Yeah.
So this yuga, whichever yuga we are born, are no restriction. It doesn't hinder anything.
That's right. That's right. What's most important in terms of when you're born, in terms of self-realization, is how close to the birth of an avatar or the life of an avatar you are, and if you're a part of his family. Because then you can use his spiritual power or her spiritual power to rise quickly to God. And in that sense, we're doing quite well, because we have Master and our other avatars. Yeah. Okay, Priya, thank you. Okay, anybody else? We've got some more hands up here. You can just go ahead and talk. Ritu?
Yeah. Good evening, Satya.
Good evening.
It was a very, very nice class. Really, we could understand a lot, or else it was very, very difficult. I had read this book earlier, but honestly, I never understood anything. I just kept it the way it is. And, today with all the slides and everything, it was really very nice. And you just, I don't know, I don't remember whether you read the point where you just said, but I found it very useful. Although you said Dwapar Yuga is, age of atomic power and also, energy, and also it is the most violent age. And you also said Kali Yuga, of course, is violent. But in these ages, as you read it or you pointed out, I don't remember, you said that you can reach enlightenment faster because the struggle to enlightenment is quite is much because we are away from the galactic center, and so it's not at all conducive for spiritual growth or for mental growth. And so when you stick to but if you still stick to spiritual growth, if you still think that I would want to find God, probably if we can reach enlightenment faster is what I understood, and I just wanted to say, yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
class.
you're most welcome. I don't know that it's a mark of that we're in the lower yugas, but what I've read is that it's when we're changing between yugas. So in other words, it's easier to find God when you're going from Kali to Dwapara, or Dwapara to Treta, or Treta to Satya. These transition times are kind of the exciting times. And why is it easier to find God during these times? Who knows? Maybe because the world is in chaos, it makes us sort of look for some higher truth. Like, for example, in this lockdown, some of the students in level 1 were saying today that because of all these things out of their control and there's only so much you can do now in the house, that they were starting to go inward and ask, what is it all for, this life? And so maybe it's that way, whereas in the middle of the yuga, maybe everything is just kind of as it always was, and we kind of feel that this is how life is, and we don't question it because we're not in a transition period. Maybe that makes it harder to seek God. I don't know. But in any case, this is what I've come to understand. But, in talking with Priya, the main thing is we're here with Master, and so it's good. And so that's our greatest blessing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Ritu. Okay, so, yes, Ilango, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment to the point we discussed. Actually, transition periods are important, or it's a good conducive for spiritual assignment. That is why we do meditation or puja on the transition, morning transition, afternoon transition, evening transition. We call it Sandhya Param or Sandhi Param or noon transitions. So similarly, I also feel that certain portals are more accessible during the transition period. Is my
Yeah, that's very interesting connection. Thank you. Jyoti, did you want to say something?
Yes, I read that chapter earlier, but I could not understand anything. But then when you explain this, it all looks so easy. And when I read that chapter, I was thinking maybe Swami Yukteswar wrote something according to this understanding. We will, so we're not able to understand.
Right.
But when you took us through, he has written so clearly, so easy to understand. So I was thinking for fun, one day you could explain as E is equal to MC square also. Maybe you would make it as simple as this.
Sorry, say that last part again. In one day, what?
One day for fun, not for fun. You would if you explain as what E is equal to MC square theory also. Because everybody says that is tough. Everybody was telling this book was tough.
Yeah.
So before 18 only we thought it is tough.
Yeah.
Everybody was saying from childhood I hear that E is MC square
Yeah.
is tough. Nobody will be able to understand.
Yeah.
Only two people understand.
Yeah.
Probably when you teach teachers probably will understand that too.
Yeah, no, physics is not my strong suit. I had it explained to me clearly, but I'm not able to explain it clearly. I'd say better to go on YouTube. There's probably a 10-minute video with animations and things that'll make it very clear. But I appreciate the thought. You know, I have to tell you all that I didn't understand the book the first time I read it. I mean, not the book, just this introduction, just what I said. When about the time I got to Manu, I started to pass out. And then, you know, but you go over it, and you go over it again, and maybe not day after day, but maybe take a break, and then after a month, visit it again. And, you know, it basically, as you review it, and as you grow also, it just becomes easier and easier to assimilate. Never easy, so I should say less and less difficult. But anyway, I'm glad that it seems clear now. So I appreciate that, Jyoti. Thank you. Okay, we've got, who is this here? Is that Ulaga? Ulaga? Ulaga Maya, are you there? Go ahead. Oh, you know, we can't hear you. Okay, well, if you'd like to speak, please go ahead. Otherwise, anybody else before we go? Have we done it? Is it time to go? Okay. Well, yes. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't know why we can't hear. If you want, you can call me. That could be another option if you wanted to, because I can't hear you through the computer for some reason, but you can just call me through the phone if you want. Ulagamai. Okay. So, just a reminder, class is next week, Wednesday. It will not be this long. It will be longer. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be less long. And so we'll go over chapter 2 of the book, and that'll be good. All right. So, well, thank you all. It's been a joy. Thank you for all your feedback at the end. I really appreciate that. It's reassuring because this was quite a journey. And thank you to all of you who survived it, and thanks for your comments. So please, if you haven't had dinner already, sapringa, and good night.